It's November 21st, 2022. This is a special edition of Roqe. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 217 of Roqe. With Mahabad, any pretense is totally gone. It's a full-on war on the people of Iran. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto. Salam Dustan Aziz. Durud ba shama. This week in Kurdistan, any pretense is totally gone. It's a full-on war on the people of Iran. And this is a really important moment that we all have to recognize, a macabre escalation that will be horrific before this theocracy is dead. Maybe we shouldn't get too distracted by leadership aspirants and World Cup anthems. This is the urgent situation. This is the red alarm proclamation. With the city of Mahabad, any pretense is totally gone. It's a full-on war on the people of Iran. Remember those friends of yours who explained to you how different the situation is with Ukraine, given that that's a military conflict and a Russian invasion? Take a look at the tanks sent to Kurdistan this weekend and try to see this as anything other than a similar equation. This is a war, but the invading force is not from outside the borders. The invaders are the Islamic Republic regime, and the attack is on the Iranian people. To recap, in an effort to quash massive protests in Kurdish-majority cities and towns in western Iran, including and in particular Mahabad, the regime has turned its military hardware on an unarmed population. The sound of bombs, gunfire, explosions, and screams, the sounds of a massacre of those who dared to speak out or were simply in the way, a crackdown with the internet blocked and the lights turned off at the end of the day. It's horror movie stuff. The latest clashes erupted on Friday when security forces opened fire at those who had gathered for the funeral services of protesters killed earlier in the week. Let me say that again. They were shooting at innocent people attending the funerals of others that they'd killed. Is there no end to how barbaric this regime can get? Is there no bar that is too low for them to set? There have been dozens of lives stolen in the last 48 hours, children murdered by an Islamic regime lashing out in a final act of treachery. And perhaps it was inevitable that it would come to this, as girls and boys, women and men rise from every corner of the country to reject an illegitimate cabal of ayatollahs and fight to be free. Maybe it was inevitable that this bloodbath would come to be. But to be clear, the suggestion that there is a war going on is no longer a metaphor. This is not symbolic or theoretical. This is not overstated or hypothetical. This is urgent. With Mahabad, any pretense is totally gone. It's a full-on war on the people of Iran. And there are some signs of solidarity across the country, the little indicators of hope that attempts to divide and conquer have failed, a hope that unity has prevailed. And so the chants were heard tonight in Tehran. Mahabad tanha nist, kol Iran pushtishe, and Mahabad Kurdistan, a model for the whole of Iran. The slogans are inspired, but the message must be worldwide. Don't let CNN get away with calling this ongoing protests in Iran anymore. Don't let mainstream media suggest that this is only about the hijab and nothing more. This is a war. It's a war between a military and an unarmed nation. It's a humanitarian crisis and a dire ambush of a population. If you spent the last 2 months wondering whether to jump into speaking out about Iran and taking to the streets, now would be the moment to enter the fray. If you've been too busy or find it too upsetting or wonder if you could really make a difference, surely it's the time to join the movement today. It's a full-on war on the people of Iran. None of us should rest easily until this regime is finally gone. Coming up, we have some featured guests joining us from around the world, including Bahman Ghobadi on Kurdistan, Sahar F in Qatar, and Mohsen Parsa on his legal challenge to this regime. This is Roqe, episode 217, The Uprising. It's a full-on war on the people of Iran. Hi there. Quite a show coming up. There is so much to get to. There's so much going on. We are going to, of course, deal with the World Cup. There was that epic game today. Well, it didn't turn out to be an epic game. It was an epic spectacle between England and Iran. And there's so much to talk about with that. We'll get to that with our roundtable. But our first featured guest today, Sahar F, who's a football analyst in England normally, is in Qatar right now, where she went to the game. Not only did she go to the game, but she went to the game wearing a Woman Life Freedom T-shirt and chanting slogans and holding a placard with some of her friends, and has lived to tell the tale. But by the sounds of it, it was quite a harrowing experience on the one hand for her, on the other hand, an enlightening one that she can tell us about. Being there in that stadium while Team Melli played awfully and lost to England. So we'll get to that. We'll get to the World Cup and the controversies or the chatter around all of that. But also, as per my opening essay just now, we are going to talk about this desperate situation in Kurdistan, which really ultimately should be the priority at this point for anyone who's interested in what's going on with this Iranian revolution. This is ground zero at this stage. Mahabad, Kurdistan, it is just an awful situation. And there's few people better to talk about it in terms of being a passionate voice for the Kurdish people, for the Iranian Kurdish people as well. Bahman Ghobadi, the great filmmaker, and outspoken critic of this regime. Of course, he's exiled, so I think he'll be joining us this time from New York. But Bahman Ghobadi coming up. You really don't want to miss anytime he's on the program. I mean, so far, Sahar Fatemi, you want to hear this. She's in Qatar. I know she's going to have interesting things to say. Bahman Ghobadi, you never want to miss because he's a wordsmith. I think a lot of this interview will probably end up being in Persian because Bahman prefers to speak in Farsi. But so be aware of that if you're a non-Iranian, non-Farsi speaker, I should say. That one may have some Persian sprinkled into it. And then before the end of the show, our third featured guest is going to talk about the role of big social media platforms in keeping the Islamic Republic of Iran in power. So there is an Iranian-American attorney in California who has launched a lawsuit against Twitter, Instagram, and Meta around practices that he argues amount to enabling the policies and continued power of the regime in Iran. This is something that is not new. We've talked about this. We've talked about everything from shadow banning to the seeming amplification of pro-regime voices, and certainly the enabling of someone like Ayatollah Khamenei being on Twitter and these platforms. So Mohsen Parsa, the lawyer and also self-described soccer geek, who I think played with the youth national team in Iran and has played with the American team. He's a former soccer player, so he'll have something to say about the football situation and the World Cup as well, and Iran's role in it. Let me bring in our Roqe Roundtable before we get to our featured guests. As ever, hello to you, Pega.
Hello.
And hello, Shaya.
Hi, Azza.
Last time I saw both of you, other than in this studio, was on a freezing tundra,
yes.
-0 weather, and this was part of a day of demonstrations in many cities around the world, global day of action, I guess, of some kind, that we took part in here in Toronto. And shout out to the Iranian Canadians who were there. I posted this on my Instagram, a video of it, but I think there was about 30,000 of us there in freezing weather. Which of course is what it is, but it's great to see that kind of neither rain nor shine, will stop, or sleet nor snow will stop people who are passionate about trying to do what we can to support the folks in Iran. So it was heartening to see that many people out there. It's funny, right before I went, I was talking to a friend to coordinate to get there, and he said, I wonder if, it's freezing outside, like Iranians, like we were kind of like doing our little prejudice about, and it turned out to be a very, very strong contingent of people who really wanted to be there and were there for a few hours.
Yeah, I think a lot of people prior to actually arriving there had the same thought. I know me and a couple of friends were wondering the same thing and thinking, is it going to be a turnout like back in October when we saw upwards of 50,000 people show up? And mind you, the weather was very different then, but like you said, there was roughly 30,000 people, and we weren't the only place taking part in the global rally that had snow.
Okay.
Yeah, so Stockholm in Sweden, they had similar weather.
Shout out to our Swedish sisters and brothers.
Yeah, exactly. I think they also braved some intense weather. And then, of course, some other places as well included Munich, Germany, Den Haag, Netherlands, Oslo, Norway, and of course, other Canadian cities like Vancouver, Halifax, and there's so many more. I think there was 100 some odd cities.
But are all these places snow?
No.
Okay.
I think Stockholm was the only
we moved on from the snow.
We moved on from the snow. Yeah, Stockholm was the only other city who ventured into the snow like we did, but it was amazing to see the turnout despite the freezing cold.
Yeah, and again, a couple of months in, I do hear people sort of whispering things like, "Well, I don't think the protests have the enthusiasm that they used to," and there you are, 30,000 in Toronto. I know there was one in DC as well. I happened to be I didn't happen to be. I went to Washington DC on Friday evening to see this Iran Rising exhibition at the Fathom Gallery in Georgetown. This was an exhibit presented by DC-based Iranian American women and designers and artists. It was really impressive. It was kind of like a poster art of we've talked about the fertility and the prolific nature of the art, the creativity that's come out of this revolution. Right. And some of it has been about these posters that have been created by a lot of women artists and featuring all kinds of images, some of which have become iconic now. So this was an exhibition of that. It was really, really nice to see in DC, and shout out to, congratulations to those people who organized that. It was quite good. Shaya, you were in Toronto because as I came to the protest, I saw that you were up there amongst the speakers, but you were speaking with your fingers on the piano. You were performing. What was it like to perform in those?
Oh, it was
for an Iranian kid who's just come from Iran. It was you're not used to the Canadian gigs outside, huh?
It was. It was a really interesting experience playing there. Yes, one side is like it was really freezing, and I played with like two gloves on my hand, but the other thing that for me was like heartwarming. So our band now is mostly Canadian, and they were like amazed again by the crowd,
the size of the crowd.
Yes, and so it was interesting. This morning, Josh, one of our player, he sent me an announcement for the next rally. That Shaya, I know that the next rally.
And he's not Iranian.
No, he's not Iranian.
Great.
So he's getting to it, and it was amazing.
It was really good. It was nice to see you up there. All right, well, so these protests or these demonstration rallies in support of what's going on in Iran with the revolution were happening. But at the same time, as I talked about in the opening essay, it's been a very difficult weekend in terms of the activities of this murderous regime in Kurdistan, in Mahabad. And I've said what I can say about it. It is the closest thing to a full-on war, and an attack on the Iranian people by an unethical and increasingly unstable regime on the run. But these are really horrifying images and news bits that we're hearing out of that region. Yeah,
some of the videos that I'm sure so many of us have seen, the viral videos showing almost a state of military presence. Not even almost. It is utmost
absolutely,
military presence, and you see this lineup of the military vehicles and the armed guards and things like that. You hear the stories of break-ins into people's homes, destruction of property, let alone all the brutality that we've been hearing in terms of actually, beating, killing, torturing, raping individuals. And I actually saw a video, and I don't know, I think it's one that a lot of people might have seen, but this one really, really stuck with me. And it was just it was a video of the scene is just I guess blood covered ground, and all you're hearing is the screams and crying of the individual who is filming this. And it's just sounds. I mean, visually there's not much to see. It's just this constant image of this floor, but the sounds that you hear, it is so heartbreaking and gut-wrenching. And I don't know, I mean, those sounds have just stayed with me, and the news that we continue to hear is just, it's horrific.
Yeah, it's fair to say this revolution is blood-soaked at this point. And this is certainly one of the outstandingly horrible events that have happened in the last 2 months, where, as I said again in the essay, that you basically tanks rolling in like an invading country into its supposedly its own people. I don't know if we consider the regime our own people at this point.
Yeah. The other side of it is, and I know I've said this on so many of the various episodes and even in conversations with everyone here and friends outside, but this amazement that I continue to have with the consistency and the unwavering support, especially in a place like Mahabad. I mean, you've seen this for weeks and weeks on end, and it's just unwavering. Even despite these tanks and the military presence now, you do not see them letting up.
Well, that's why the regime is going in there like that, because Kurdistan is one of the places of real resistance that's leading the charge, and so, and yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's overwhelmingly inspiring to see how the resilience of the Kurdish Iranian people. But it's so. This goes into the category of one of those things. I think it was Saturday night. I don't know. It was one of those nights where I was going through social media and I really just turned off the phone. I was like, okay, enough for tonight. This is just really disturbing stuff.
There was also reports that came from inside Javan Rud, which is another small city. I think that's northwest of Kermanshah, if I'm not mistaken. And something that I read that, again, I mean, there's no shortage of horrific things that we hear, but there was a shortage of blood because of everything that's been taking place.
Wow.
And so they had requested blood from a blood bank, but the authorities wouldn't allow these medical, like the ambulances or whoever it was that was trying to bring this blood over to them into the city. So what we ended up seeing, I think it was Sunday night,
I did
is that video of all of these individuals who have rushed to this clinic to donate blood because they heard, you know, what is happening. And I mean, just seeing that was just awful.
Few hours ago, Sepah also attacked the Democratic Party of Kurdistan in Erbil. So I mean,
in Iraq.
Iraq, and
the Kurds are taking it on both sides of the border.
It's
okay. So in the meantime, as that goes on, and we're committed to not being entirely distracted by football, to not talk about these things, but the World Cup began yesterday, and of course today was the Iran-England match, which in another universe or another time would be the most exciting day of the year for me. Wow, my country of my ancestry, Iran, against the country of my birthplace, England. Who do I choose? Well, it didn't turn into that difficult a choice for me, and I want to be really. I'm not going to be on the fence here about this. I was cheering for England with full lungs. Let's go, Three Lions! Come on, then, England. I am just. I was just sickened by Team Melli in recent days. Those pictures, first with Raisi, and then the pictures of high-fiving and being happy, and juxtaposed against players from other countries who are much more serious. And Alexander Zinchenko is an Arsenal player, happens to be Ukrainian. There's shots of him crying, and then the Team Melli players, looking like they're going to Club Med or something. And news came out yesterday that the English team was going to take a knee. Now I know this. Let me be clear that I understand that this was not just for Iran. This is, as Coach Southgate says, this is for human rights and inclusivity. But I was cheering that taking the knee, as small and symbolic and potentially irrelevant as it could be, because I knew the spectacle of these guys taking the knee, Team England taking the knee, while the Team Melli guys stand there, and kids are being killed back in Iran. It would just be outrageous. And of course, there was the desperate hope that there would be something big that Team Melli does. As far as I'm concerned, not singing the national anthem as a gesture wasn't big enough for me. By that time, they'd lost me, and it didn't sort of move the dial. And then they proceeded to just be sadly just out of it on the pitch. I mean, England's got a good team, but this was a mismatch of epic proportions. I thought 6-2 flattered Team Melli by the end. You know, it was like it could have been 10-0. You know, they just looked out of it. So I think you disagree with me or something.
I don't disagree with you. I think I have some similar thoughts and some thoughts that are different. First off, I was ridiculously emotional all morning. I cried from about 7:45 to like 8:30. I think I was just in tears the entire time. And I mean, it was just a mix of emotions, this roller coaster of, you know, hoping that they would do something like you said, and the anxiety of what are they going to do, and, you know, hearing the news from Mahabad and seeing those images at the same time, or even the night before. I think it was just a collection of all of that. Plus the fact that I'm a diehard soccer fan. I have been for years and years, and typically around this time I'd be going crazy cheering for Team Italy. So, you know, I think a combination of all of that was making me really, really emotional. And when they didn't sing the national anthem, it was a sigh of relief for me, you know, because honestly, I wasn't sure if they were going to or not. So, you know, I'm happy they didn't, obviously. Do I think it's enough? No, I wish they had done more. I wish, you know, when Taremi scored, I wish he had done what the, what was it, the other individual, the football player who made the gesture of cutting his hair and things like that. I wish he had done something like that. But again, you know, to play devil's advocate, I'm also going to say we heard even the Iranian coach say that we don't know what kind of pressure these guys are under. And I think it's important not to lose sight of that. So
no one loses sight of that. First of all, don't play devil's advocate. I mean, let's be real. I mean, everyone gets that these guys are under a lot of pressure, and everyone with a big platform in Iran is under a lot of pressure, and a lot of them. I'm sorry, I know they're not Team Melli, but that women's basketball team, who as an entire team took the photo without the hijab on and did a big fuck you to the regime. Yeah. I mean, there are people, not just, you know, in sports, there are Iranians doing something. And it was, you know, it's just so depressing. I mean, and
don't get me wrong, I'm not defending them in any way, shape, or form. I just think that, you know, this has become such a big thing, and I think everyone is using this as an outlet for their anger. Sure. And I think, you know, it's important to remember that at the end of the day, we're trying to keep eyes on Iran, and if this is the way to do it, if going to these games and holding up a slogan or a sign or something like that, or showing up in a t-shirt, going to these games doesn't mean that we're supporting the Islamic Republic.
Who's going to these games? First of all, Sahar F is coming up in a minute. She's in Qatar, and she went there to demonstrate.
Exactly.
But I don't know how many people are. I mean, I can tell you one of the most depressing things about watching this game, I thought this was why you're crying, is the only thing they showed on the crowd shots were these, you know, ridiculously euphoric Jumhuri Islami, like flag holding guys, you know, who look like, first of all, your team is losing like 5-0, dude. Calm down, you know. We get it. You're all excited and hopped up to support the regime or something. Listen, I am so, you know me. I don't want to shame the players or get them, you know, ruin their lives or something like that. I'm just so disappointed at this opportunity that was missed by Team Melli, and so. It's just very clear for me. Okay, well, let's, you know, I'll in as much as I'll focus on the World Cup, it'll be on other teams and stuff, because it's just been so disappointing. Yeah. And the anthem, like I saw, I feel like the Western people on Twitter have interpreted this as some incredible, like Jon Stewart and Barry Weiss and all these people were going, now this is bravery. And it's like, well,
there's been braver acts.
There's been so many more braver acts by individuals, right? And there's so much that these guys could have done.
Yeah.
Even when they scored, I know they didn't celebrate, but there was an opportunity there, right?
That's what I was
symbolic
looking for.
gesture, zero, nothing.
And I've said from weeks ago when we were talking about the World Cup that I was going to wait until this game to see what they would do before I really took a stance and went with the boycotting and this and that. And I'm disappointed. I really am. And I don't even know if I'm going to watch the other games that Iran is going to play because of the fact that I'm so disappointed. But what I was saying earlier is that I don't think that it's a time or place for misplaced anger. That's all. That's my biggest kind of note to add in here. And
what's the misplaced part?
In terms of taking out our anger with everything that's happening on just this team.
On the team.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I think that if anything, we should be using the World Cup as a platform. I mean, the individuals who are there standing up to the Qatari government right now, showing up with different flags and, these signs and things like that. Those are the people we should be focusing on.
Sure.
Even though the Qatari feed won't show any of that, as they didn't. I mean, you and I were speaking before the show and you had said that you didn't see any of those things. And I didn't either watching TSN, and I only saw it on Twitter. So, amplifying those voices.
No, Sahar, who's coming up, I was trading messages with her, and she was like, did you see, she was running around with her and her friends with a huge sign.
Yeah.
Free Iran. I didn't see any of that on the feed, know. They won't, I mean, the crackdown is pretty generous. Shaya, did you watch? You didn't even watch.
Highlights. No, highlights. I mean, the whole...
Did you not want to watch?
I was asleep. So, okay. I think the whole, unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but I think the whole World Cup and the whole controversy around Iranian team is a score for Jamhuri Islami. Yeah. They're all distraction. Even the fact that we are happy that Team Melli lost is a like, it shows that how they divided. It's
sort of, except honestly, it's so sad because, again, in a different time and a different vibe, we'd be rooting these guys on to go to the second there. But honestly, I feel like, okay, they lost. If they lose a couple more games, Iran's out of the World Cup, and we can get back to not talking about Team Melli. That's part of. I just want to be done with. Yes. And that we want to talk about Mahabad today. We want to talk about, but. It's you can't ignore the fact that it was an opportunity that hasn't really been taken, or really hasn't been taken. Okay, there's the not anthem singing that some people will make note of. And
it's a score for the fucking Islamic Republic, and also you see that because of World Cup, their operation is bigger and bigger because. They know that World Cup
is beginning, so let's move the tanks into Kurdistan.
Yes.
And by the way, I know you follow the Iranian team more than I do. I'm watching Premier League most of the year, other things, Bundesliga. But this team was supposed to be good, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it was the golden team of Iran, but. Yeah. They are
that was a disaster by football standards. That was a disastrous performance, and I do feel for these guys are clearly they're just out of it. Yeah,
they looked horrible. Even as just take it. Even a look back at just the way they played, the way they looked, their appearances. It just they look like zombies. Somehow,
well, not somehow. It's clear that. It's a mess. Yeah. It's a mess in terms of there's, in a way, you can't expect them to. How are they supposed to pull a diamond out of this and win games when there's this much swirling around them? They are just young guys. They're, but I can't let go of the disappointment, and I just thought again that contrast of, and I know these things are. are symbolic things and stuff, but the contrast of like even the English team doing
That was
something,
the worst
it's just so ridiculous. It's like, really, and you can kind of see there was a weird moment too. If you saw when the English team is kneeling, they're kind of looking over at the Iranian team.
Mm-hmm.
They're used to the other side kneeling too.
Yeah.
It never happens in the Premier League or very, very seldom, the other team doesn't kneel.
Mm-hmm.
I think it happened once with an Eastern European team, and it was big news that, and so they're kind of looking over, and then they stand up after a while, and it just, the whole thing was so uncomfortable and yeah.
Just an awkward moment overall, and
one thing when we talk about the skewed interpretation of things sometimes in the West, because people we can forgive non-Iranians for not being in the weeds the way most of the people in the Iranian diaspora are. So this, without the backdrop of all the things that Team Melli hasn't done on the meeting with Raisi and whatever, this does seem like a courageous act.
Yeah.
Oh, these guys just turned up and they didn't sing the national anthem. Wow, right? But along those lines, something that I've been noticing the last few days too is a frustration with the. I've had a frustration in as much as I've noticed that Western media. I think I saw something on CNN or something. And they were covering the protest, the revolution, which they call protests in Iran.
still,
Yeah. And they said, it comes back to the anchor guy, and he goes, it's like Don Lemon or something, and he goes, those are the protests in Iran, where people are protesting because a 22-year-old girl who was supposed to wear a hijab, named Mahsa Amini, died. And of course, Mahsa Amini is the icon, that's the precipitant, the moment that this all began. But it's so far behind to be saying. It's really 2 months ago's news to say this is about Mahsa Amini's hijab at this point, and the Western media, even now that some have caught up to, we should cover what's happening in Iran, are so far behind on what this is about for Iranians. It really is it really diminishes the importance of what's going on to say these are some protests about the girl that was killed. It's with all due respect to Mahsa Amini, this is about an entire cultural and historic movement and for change led by women around a number of issues, but fundamentally to get rid of a regime. It's not a protest movement about it was for a week, or maybe 3 weeks. So it's strange how, or maybe it's not surprising that despite one guest here and there on some of these major media outlets who do a good job to explain once in a while, they're just so far behind what's actually happening.
The part that I wanted to actually point out is what you said about the fact that they don't say it's a movement looking to get rid of this regime. That's the part that I've only heard maybe a handful of times in any sort of coverage. It's this, very nicely packaged narrative of 22-year-old girl was killed and then there's these protests.
Yeah.
There's no further explanation.
And it's about the hijab.
Yeah.
It's only about the hijab,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
that even this guy was like, based on the fact that the morality police, when was the last time anybody even talked about the Gasht Irshad? That's like, 100 years ago at this point, The protesters themselves have moved so far beyond that. Every time we talk to somebody in Iran on our Voices of Iran, they say, I haven't worn a hijab in months, let's go. What's next, right? So I'm not sure what we do about that. I guess that's just back in the category of lack of awareness and now that we have some Western media attention, it's a story here and there. I know there's some exceptions, by the way. Don't write to me and say there was an article in The Guardian that was really good. I know there's some good stuff, but overall it doesn't, it's not the nuances that again are explained to us on a daily basis about what's going on in the Ukraine situation don't exist when it comes to Iran.
I think one of the other things is, even taking it back to the rally this Saturday, I feel like we're also still stuck on some of the same chants. when we're at these rallies. So, if there is news coverage at these rallies and they're hearing the same chants, for example, say her name, Mahsa Amini, although I think it's still important, we should be voicing other things as well so that the coverage could be about.
Although one of the things I felt really moved by at this demonstration in Toronto, and I'm sure this is the case in many of the others, is there's a new incentive or an idea that to come to these demonstrations with photos of the people either who are detained or who have died. And so there was a lot of pictures of a lot of the different kids that have died, of Keon and Sarina and Nika, and a lot of people holding up signs of people who are detained, who are in Irvine. And I thought that was actually progress, in terms of educating each other, reminding each other of all the people we have to remember,
Yeah, the other theme that just added to like other themes in this revolution is the rainbow,
Yeah.
Like it's
little Keon's.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of actually it's very beautiful that a lot of anyone who's remembering Keon does the does Keon Pierre-Falak, the little boy that was. What's that?
Or his invention, the little
boat. Yeah. He's really captured the imagination of a lot of people. Well, I'm sorry that you cried this morning watching that game.
I've been crying a lot the last, 2 months?
I know, I know. But
Jian, before going to our guest, I want to mention the new wave of arresting in Iran.
Yes, including our friend.
Ali Asadullahi, he was arrested. He was a great poet, and he was arrested today. We try to bring his sister Shailin. Actually, she was
on the show about 3 weeks ago when we were in Istanbul.
So we try to bring her, and also a couple actresses. Actually, they were arrested in Tehran, and Hengame Ghaziani, which I think she has done a brave act. Actually, I really appreciated her act, and so the new wave of arresting is happening, and so.
It really is amazing that this this murderous regime can keep up with all of their torturous. No, I mean, really is. It's like Jesus. I mean, it's like we're launching an attack here. We've got the crackdown in Qatar. We've got to make sure that the internet is knocked off. We're going to arrest these famous actresses and poets and. It's just a
continue with the executions.
Don't forget the executions. Yep. It is a really remarkable. But all of it smacks of desperation, though. At the same time, it's the two sides of the coin. On the one hand, it's the brutal crackdown that could end things. On the other hand, it's such evidence that they're on the run and they're feeling threatened and really weird days to be Iranian, eh?
Very,
so
very
weird, like with the World Cup today was such a weird. I was in New York 4 years ago, and at the time, people still hated the regime or whatever, but that was when Team Melli were heroes. Everybody. This was the one time of the, we would, there would be a message sent out for where the Iranians would gather, and I didn't. When I was living in New York for a couple of years, I didn't really see a lot of Iranians. It's not like Toronto where you see Iranians on the street everywhere talking Persian and stuff. But then suddenly when the Team Melli was playing, there was like 300 people in a bar, and I would go, all the Iranians are here, and just reflecting on that and how people just don't have the appetite to be, enjoying this right now.
Enjoying anything, really. I mean, the whole I've said roller coaster of emotions about 500 times I think over the last weeks, and it's found a new meaning each and every day for sure.
How are you supposed to feel great when Mahabad is happening? All right, well, thank you. I want to go to Qatar and hear more from the actual ground of somebody who's protesting there. So Shaya Pega, we'll see you on the other side. Let's get to our first guest. She is an Iranian-British entrepreneur and the founder of the popular Tahdik Lover site. She's also a former football analyst with the English Premier League. Sahar has taken a trip to Doha to attend the World Cup and accomplish a mission of amplifying the voices of the protest movement inside Iran. She's been watching the games live there, currently in Qatar, and right now, Sahar Fatemi joins me from Doha. Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Well, you sound, it sounds like it's been a long day already.
Sound of revolution.
Yes. Where are you right now?
Well, I actually came with my friends to a hotel to watch the game, Wales and USA. So I'm here.
Okay.
Now, yes.
You were at well, first of all, I mean, you're there in Qatar,
yes.
And I know you were at the Iran-England game today. I mean, we've been talking about this throughout the show, and I've been talking about this with friends since we all watched it. You were actually there. Yeah. Tell me first about the decision to, as you know, a lot of people have decided to not go to Qatar and not be part of this thing. You clearly made a conscious decision. Tell me why.
Yeah. Well, I totally respect people who did make this decision, but me as a football analyst and who I've got like a platform and I've got my followers, I made it clear what my opinion is on Team Melli. So I came here because I knew there is going to be lots of pro-regime people out here chanting for Iran and trying to put a normal face on this Iranian regime, on Iran, and show the world that everything is okay, but it's not. So it was my job and people who came with me, my friends, to sort of show the opposite, that nothing is normal. Because I knew that there's going to be so many media around the world covering this, even though Qataris, they did put some restriction, and Qatari TV channel is showing the game. They are showing the matches with 3 minutes delay so they can censor. I've heard that so many of the games that my friends were watching, the match on different servers, links, online streaming, and they said they didn't see any of the pictures that I've put online, the Women Life Freedom flag, the placards and everything.
Yeah.
So they are censoring and they're being strict.
Yeah. This is why I was actually really excited to talk to you, to get a sense of what it was like inside there, because even on the Canadian feed where I was watching, because I know this was different from certainly different from what they're seeing in Iran, but even from the American feed that didn't, for example, show the English team taking the knee, we saw that on the Canadian feed. But I have to say, and I've been lamenting it, most of the crowd shots, pretty much the only crowd shots we saw that involved Iranians were people holding the Islamic Republic flag and celebrating like it's a club night, and then women with a hijab and also the Jumhuriyat Islami flag. And there was really nothing else. There was certainly no indication. I've seen online somebody holding a Khorshid flag, but other than that, seeing that online, I haven't seen. There was nothing in the feed that would suggest that anybody was disputing the presence of Team Melli.
Yes, and honestly, throughout the match, they were dominating us. They were trying to silence us because they have been preparing for this for almost over a month. They've got the money, they've got the resources, they're in a group. But us, we are all in small groups, friends getting together, creating a Telegram chat or a WhatsApp chat together in Qatar. But then whenever I was in the stadium, obviously Canadian TV, they are also getting the feed from the Qataris, from the broadcasters there, So, and the Qataris have put restriction and they have told specifically not to cover any Iranian protests. So when I was out there in the stadium, honestly, the first half an hour, I went on British Airways and I wanted to check a flight out tomorrow.
Wow.
Because I was honestly, I was crying. I was so overwhelmed because I was like, I cannot deal with this. I will do much more if I'm home. I can do much more for this revolution and the movement than being here. I don't have the power, the strength to silence them, because every single time we would say woman, life, freedom, zandagi, azadi, they would say Ya Ali Madad, which is their chant for pro-regime, the Basijis, or Iraniye ba ghairat, which is the Iranian with an honor, Irani with an honor, it's basically translation. So they were silencing us every time, which is a good sign, they are scared of us. They're scared of every single chant we have, the clothing, the things that we wear, that are woman life freedom shirts. They are scared of.
Did you wear that? Were you allowed to wear that?
Yeah, I was wearing it all. Yeah. So basically, because I was a bit, they scared me like, oh, you can't take any flag, any placards, anything. So I put a shirt on top of it. So when I went inside, we took our placards, which was like individual letters: woman life freedom, free Iran, and Masa Amini. Like we had like 30 placards, so we were holding it one by one, like 15 people, and we took that in. We took our Zan Zendegi flag in as well. But the first few minutes was overwhelming. But then I found some people with Zan Zendegi, also the t-shirt on, and I joined them.
Wow.
So that, I joined them because that was the only way. Even that, it was small. But then it was we're going to join forces for the next match. We're going to go to each other's blocks. So find a block that is like we can all come together so we can, dominate them. Otherwise, honestly, it is so... The rage that I was so furious looking at these Basijis chanting and smiling and being happy, and I was like, oh God, I wasn't expecting.
So who do you expect though? I mean, look, we had a football analyst last week, our friend Mehrdad Ahmadpour on the show, and one of the things he was saying was one of his concerns is that because so many Iranians in the diaspora have decided to not go to Qatar, they don't want to support this World Cup, they don't want to support Team Melli. What's left in the stands then is pro-regime people and people that the regime has brought in. Did you have a sense of who these people were? These ones that we were seeing on? I mean, what can you profile them? I mean, who are they? What are they doing?
Well, they are so many of them. They're wearing. I mean, all of them are wearing Iran flag. Some of them are made clothes out of the Iran flag. So, and also, every single time, as I mentioned before, every single time we said Zandagi Azadi, there will be Yo Ali Madad, Yo Ali Madad. And come on, that's obvious. They want to silence us. There's no other reason that when we start saying women life freedom, they say Yo Ali Madad.
Right. So they're not just they're not just not with the movement. They're honestly, actively supporting the regime.
Oh yeah. They are there to silence us. They are here to do this. And some of them, honestly, they don't even care about football. I mean, they don't even care what's happening there. They just want to intimidate us. And honestly, me myself, when England scored, I looked at Basiji. I was like, I hope you concede another 5. And he looked at me so angrily, and I was like, what is she talking about? Who is she? Who the fuck is she? And then I just walked away. But they are there to intimidate us, and it's gonna get worse because this is the first match.
Yeah.
We have been on media everywhere. I spoke to every single media out there. I went there in front of the camera. I was talking about Iran. Honestly, you can hear my voice. I mean, I haven't stopped and I have a headache now. But it's gonna be more difficult next time.
Did you see, Sahar? To take a breath. I mean, I feel bad that I'm making you talk. Your voice is so, but it's listen. From the standpoint of, and I've already made my opinion clear on the show that I didn't. The not singing the anthem didn't move me enough to me the contrast of an English team. Obviously, I know you live in England and you know that I was born there, and I have a predilection towards the English team as ever. But you know, in a different time, I'd be sort of debating, well, which team am I going to support? But the options were obvious for me today, and I wanted to support the English team because I've been so disappointed by Team Melli. When the English team was taking the knee, was there any sense, I mean, other than not singing the anthem, was there anything you could see in the stadium from the Iranian players that suggested that they were wanting to do something, or you know?
No. The only thing I would say is Mehdi Taremi. When he scored twice, Tora came to kiss him on the cheek, and he kind of pulled away, and he looked very sad. They were all lifeless, demotivated. Honestly, the first half was such a bad performance.
Yeah, they looked awful as a team. They were awful.
They look awful, and it's because of the online harassment as well. I mean, I'm not really pro that. I don't like harassing the players online. I don't support them. I mean, you know me. I have my own football show, and I loved Team Melli, and I still care about football. I love football, and you can't imagine. We are sitting here right now with Iranians, and I'm like, this is such a conflicted, such a messed up feeling.
Yeah.
Like, we just came out of the stadium, and honestly, I didn't even digest that we actually conceded 6 goals, and we were sitting here just watching the highlights before the USA and Wales match. I was like, wow, that was. I just understood. I just came to realization, like, wow, we actually considered 6 goals. Honestly, in the stadium, no, but I don't think anybody.
To be honest, the 6-2 flatters Team Melli. It was worse than that, I thought, in terms of the distance between how good England looked and how bad Iran looked. I'm surprised that it was 6-2. It should have been. It could have been 10-0.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
It was just awful. It was horrible. And so in that moment, you said when the game was first starting, and you were thinking, I'm going to get a flight out of here.
Yeah,
what was it that was making you feel that way?
The Basijis, the people, the pro-regime people around me. Like, I was, I was passing. I'm a very vocal person, and honestly, I cannot go back to Iran. If I go back to Iran, I think I'm going to be in prison right away from Imam Khomeini Airport. But I was going through the crowd, literally walking into the crowd and just shouting, "Zan Zendegi Azadi, woman life, freedom." Me, myself. People were chanting, some of them, "Well done. Damn it, Gam, you have a courage, amazing." Some people were saying, "Buro Gomsho, get lost, shut up, get lost." And some guys, like young boys, they were saying, "Buro Gomsho, khafesho," like in Farsi, "shut up, get lost," to me. And nobody was chanting with me. Nobody. And I was like, where are the people? Where are they? So when I sat down, I found like 2 people. I sat down with them, and they had some placards. I was like, okay, now there are some.
Don't isn't there assigned seating? How is it that you were wandering around and able to find
Yeah, so basically when you come inside, no, not really. When you are inside, you can really just like walk around. It's very easy. Nobody cares, to be honest. Yeah. Which is good for us. It's a good thing for us, because next game we're gonna find a block and then just sit there, all of us together.
Right. What did you think of the Iranian team? Just now, put your football hat on, and the expert that you are. I mean, and with a stake in this as an Iranian who used to love Team Melli, or what did you think of the not singing the anthem? Did you feel like honestly,
I don't feel anything after watching the beach football, the water polo, all of this, or the other
basketball team. The women's basketball team.
Not a basketball. They also didn't sing, but the one that showed pretending that he's cutting his hair. Yeah. I don't know his name now. I forgot. But anyway, I've seen so many that not singing national anthem from them didn't really move me. Although, like, for example, my dad himself is like, so what were you expecting? Honestly, now I'm thinking, what do we expect from them? It's just that it's getting worse and worse every time. Like them meeting the president, them, bowing down, and then I've got some insight as well that actually at the photo shoot, they were telling them that you don't have to smile. They were telling them that you do not have to smile. But then some of the players, which I shall not name, they said, "Oh, how many times do we get to come to the World Cup? Let us smile." That was the response. But this is inside information. But that was the response, yeah? So, I mean, I'm done with this team. I'm done. And like, honestly, there's one thing we all care about. I'm sure your listeners will care about. Is this revolution happening in Iran? And I'm here in Qatar right now to just make our voices heard however it's possible. So whatever Team Melli does, how bad it loses, or even if it wins, I don't give a damn anymore.
What was the vibe amongst the fans? First of all, did you have any interaction with the English fans? I mean, were they?
Yeah, they hold the placards with us. Some of them, they were chanting with us. Some of them were holding. And then when the national anthem for Iran was playing, I was booing. People were booing, and we were like ho as well in Farsi, like ho injury karim. Sorry, we were doing that as well. And then the English fans they turned around and they applauded us after the national anthem, and they were like showing the thumbs up to us and like sort of putting their head down, and I was like, sort of respecting us. People were understanding. And honestly, Jian, every single media we saw, every single person on the street after the stadium, after the match, we were going to them. I was like, they're killing people in Iran. We shouldn't be cheering. People shouldn't be cheering. Please be our voice. Please be our voice. Like, we are out there. Trust me, and your listeners, they should trust us. And we are here to honestly, to talk to every media, to talk to every single person we see, and talk about Iran in any way we can.
It's amazing that you're doing this, and it's a bit, to be honest, it's a bit embarrassing that it's the English fans who are supporting you, and
I know.
and then you have these Basij or Iranians.
I understand some of the girls, the boys that are coming from Iran, honestly, they are wearing the Zanzandagi Azadi t-shirts, and they have the courage, honestly. Like, they're amazing. Wearing that, they are putting themselves at risk because they're Iranian police here. They're Iranian police with Iranian flag here at the stadium. So they have the courage.
How do you identify them? How do you know that
they have the Iran flag? They have the Iran flag. They're actually.
You meaning they're in an Iranian uniform, like Iranian police?
No, like a police police outfit, but with Iran flag on it.
Wow!
I will send the picture. Yeah. It's and yeah, it's crazy.
What are they doing there?
Controlling people. There was a woman with a Lion Sun flag, and they didn't let her out from out of the stadium.
Yeah, I heard about that.
They took the flag. Yeah, so they took the Women Life Freedom flag away as well after the second half. They saw. I posted it. I think I was the first one posting on Twitter. If you go on my Twitter, and it got like 4,000 likes. It went viral, and then after that, I saw that they were putting it, and they took it away. They took it away after the first half. So imagine how they're censoring. They saw, oh my God, it's attracting media. Let us take it away. They had it the whole first half, and now like it was gone the second half.
Are you scared about? I mean,
my safety?
Yeah, I mean,
I am. I'm literally. Listen, my dad follows me to the bathroom. Like, he stands.
Oh, he's with you. Your dad's with you.
Yes, my dad is with me.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, I wouldn't come here alone. But he followed me to the bathroom. Like, he said, I was in the bathroom, and he called me. He was like, I was late. I was like, what are you doing? Are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. So yeah, it is very scary.
What is your dad saying about all this? Your dad had all those businesses.
My dad is supportive. Of course, my dad is supportive, and he doesn't say much. Honestly, I don't really get him involved. I don't sit next to him. I don't want to put him in trouble. But let's not talk about that. But it is very dangerous. But then again, I must say, Nika, Sarina, Massa, Darius, so many young boys and girls died in Iran. They went on the streets. They put their lives in their hands, and they go on the streets. Me coming to Qatar as a British, honestly, I'm not doing anything. I mean, I'm a little bit scared, but what's the worst that can happen? I go to the British embassy. I'm like, please, I'm gonna seek shelter here for now. Like, honestly, I'm in the best position. People like me. People like us, we need to do whatever we can in our power.
So it sounds like right now, despite your strained vocal cords, you believe that you've made the right decision in terms of going to the World Cup.
Definitely. Listen, talking to these medias, like, it's very important. Like, even if we make, get 10 people to talk about Iran, 5, 3, 2 even, to talk about Iran, to even understand where Iran is on the map, that is enough. Get one person to take a picture. Do you know how many people took a picture of my t-shirt, of our flags? So many England fans. They came and took pictures. Mexican, Brazilian, they came to us. They took pictures. They put it on their social media. This is important. We have to be seen. The woman life freedom chant needs to be out there. People need to know about it.
What was the vibe like after the game? Was it like with the Iranian fans?
It was much better. Oh, it was much better because we found each other. We found each other at the match, and we were walking outside of the exiting the stadium. So we were all together as a group. So we were chanting again. Thankfully, nothing happened. Nobody stopped us. Chanting all the way. It was really good.
I mean, to be honest, just to paint the picture of this, it's a bit crazy because what you're describing is not dissimilar to, you go to an Arsenal versus Tottenham match and you want to be with the Arsenal team fans because it can get a little heated if you're wearing the jersey of the other team, or I guess Istiqlal Persepolis. The weird thing is here, I mean, this is I don't know how often this has happened in history, but there's people who are ostensibly there for the same team, but who are not on the same side. That's for sure, right? I mean,
exactly. But let me assure you that they are scared of us. they don't get near us. Honestly, they are scared of us. Like, they don't want to be close to us because they know they don't have anything to say. If they say something, we're just going to like say something back. So I feel that they don't want to get close to us. They do silence us in the stadium, but nothing more than that. So that's what I'm saying. With more organization, more planning, better planning, we can dominate them.
You'll be there at the next game.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
can I, before I let you go, I'm so grateful that I know it's been a long day for you. So thanks for doing
this. It's interviews after interviews, but I'm so glad that I can help.
Well, you weren't supposed to talk to anyone else. I thought we were just going to talk to you. but I can't help them. The BBC wants you as well. Do you, from just a football standpoint? As somebody who, normally we would have you on to just talk about, what you saw as in a game. What do you make of Team Mali? This is supposed to be a good team, that did well in Asia. It didn't look like a good team today. Do you think that's going to change?
Of course, they are good. This was a golden generation, John. This was a time for us to actually get past the group stage. But come on, we saw they were lifeless. They had no motivation. They were being harassed all past week on the internet. So what do we expect? If they were not demotivated, I would be like, oh, they have no heart, they have no feeling. Of course, they are also in pain. And that's why they didn't perform well. I wasn't expecting a good performance from them. And I think the next match is going to be even worse because we are going to be more powerful. Our voice is going to be more powerful. So, because on the internet, the videos are out and they're going to see that nobody cared about Team Melli.
Yeah.
They were all women life freedom chants everywhere and people were just there for Iran and not for Team Melli. It's going to get more worse.
It's a weird thing, isn't it? Like you kind of think, they're, on the one hand, they must be under so much pressure. On the other hand, if they just did something bigger in terms of a gesture, they'd be national heroes.
They would have become our heroes. Yeah. Exactly. And one thing that is Ali Karimi chant, Ali Karimi at minute 80, it went big, yeah? But I think my theory is Ali Karimi, who was never starting 11, Ali Karimi, the other Ali Karimi, never starting 11, he was starting 11. And you know why? Because that's the same name as Ali Karimi. So they know if people chant Ali Karimi, it's not going to indicate our hero Ali Karimi. And that is my theory and I stand by it.
How do you perform at the World Cup with all this nonsense going on, right? It really is, athletes, this. Athletes have to be focused. Even when it's a good team, you don't win the cup unless you're performing together. This is just a mess.
Honestly, next match they should just kiss the pitch, as they say, zamino bebusan, and just get the hell out. Honestly, it's much more like honorable to do that than just do another. USA is good. They're just playing now against Wales, so we're gonna be thrashed as well. Then, but yeah.
Sahar, I thank you for this, and take care of yourself, and hopefully I'll get to talk to you. We'll talk to you again at one of the other games.
Sure. Thank you, Jian.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
The breath of the morning, I keep forgetting the smell of the warm summer air. I live in a town where you can't smell a thing. You watch your feet for cracks in the pavement. Making home movies for the folks back home. Of all these weird creatures who lock up their spirits, draw holes in themselves, and live for their secrets.
This is a special edition of Roqe, episode 217, The Uprising. It's a full-on war on the people of Iran. Our next guest is an exceptional film director, a producer, a writer, and one of the most prominent Kurdish artists in the world. Bahman Ghobadi has been very outspoken regarding the current events in Iran and has long been a voice for Iranians and Kurdish Iranians. And right now he joins me from New York City today. Hello, sir.
Hello Jian. Salam be shoma.
Salam. It's so good to have you back on the program, and I know that you generally feel more comfortable in در زبان فارسی حرف زدن. هرچی راحت تره باشه شما. I'll ask the questions in English, and then you answer how you want to answer. I know, Bahman John, this has been a very difficult time for you, and you've been passionately advocating for the people in Kurdistan and Kurdish Iranians. I want to ask you about Mahabad this weekend, but first of all, just tell me in general, how are you doing?
حتما قبل از هر چیز میخوام بگم که ببخشید من سلام کردم، باید بگم درود، چون از 2 ماه پیش تصمیم گرفتم هیچ کلمه عربی رو واقعا به زبانم نیارم. تو ترکشم دارم ترک میکنم، ولی تقریبا از 20 تا احوال پرسی یکیش یه سلام میشه که من به شما گفتم، حواسم نبود. درود به شما، درود به دوستای خوبم.
درود به شما.
خیلی ممنون. خب ماهاباد به هر حال امروز جمان رود، این اتفاقاتی که اونجا تو کردستان میفته، یاد جنگ‌های داخلی من میفتم که جمهوری اسلامی بعد اون انقلاب ننگین کثیفی که انجام دادن، کردها اولین مردمی بودن در ایران که قبول نکردن و سالها جنگیدن و من خیلی از بستگانم رو از دست دادم. یعنی بچه بودم، عاشق داییم بودم 26 ساله که کشتنش، مبارزه میکرد با این رژیم، میگفت این رژیم جلادن و آینده ایران رو ویران خواهند کرد. اون موقع داییم 26 سالش بود گفتش. از اون موقع همیشه این کینه در دل ما بود نسبت به جمهوری اسلامی، همیشه، و نمیشد گفت. یعنی بیشترین شکنجه ها رو کردها دریافت میکردن یا بلوچ ها، به خاطر اینکه یک کینه‌ای جمهوری اسلامی از کردها داشت و میخواست روی همه کردها این کینه و رنج و عذاب و بیاره که آورد، خیلی کردها رو عذاب داد. امروز این اتفاقی هم که به خاطر ژینا امینی افتاد، ضربه بزرگی جمهوری اسلامی خورده که اونو از کردها میبینه و کاری که الان داره میکنه، اون آزار و اذیتی که رژیم چشید از ماجرای ژینا امینی و شورشی که مردم کردن، شعله انقلابو که کردها روشن کردن و ایران رو گرفت، عصبانی هستند و دارن اون خشمشون رو الان رو مردم خالی میکنن. عصبانیتشون الان داره تو کردستان خالی میشه. دیدی وقتی که عصبی میشی، اگه بوکسور باشی میره کیسه بوکس رو میزنی، کردستان رو مثل کیسه بوکس میبینه و داره خشمش اونجا خالی میکنه متاسفانه.
You know, I said in the introduction, in my opening essay today, that this is the first time that many of us have been comparing this. Usually when we talk about where is the international attention to the situation in Ukraine, and sometimes the response to that is, well, that was a war. That was one country waging a war on another country. This is a domestic dispute. This is the first time where it's really looked like, not just symbolically, not metaphorically, but it looks like sending in tanks, sending in military vehicles, declaring some kind of martial law. This looks like a war on the people of Iran and the people of Kurdistan in particular. Why do you think that the regime is choosing now to do this?
به خاطر اینکه راه سرکوبش الان اینه، یعنی میخواد فوکوسش و تبلیغاتش رو روی کردستان انجام بده، بگه که کردها جدای طلبن که نیستن، بگه که کردها اسلحه دستشونه که نیست. اونجا هیچ یک اسلحه هم تو کردستان، اگه شما ویدیوها رو بچه‌ها میبینن، مردم ایران خیلی باهوش شدن، میفهمن که ویدئویی نیست که تو شما یه اسلحه ببینید، همه با سنگ دارن مبارزه میکنن. راه فرار از بحران برای جمهوری اسلامی راه اندازی یک جنگ بین‌المللیه، ولی میترسه. اگه آذربایجان رو بزنه ترکیه میاد، اگه کردستان عراق رو بزنه اسرائیل میاد، اگه عربستان رو بزنه اون ائتلاف اسرائیل و عرب ها میاد. تنها جایی که الان زورش میرسه، این قدر قدرت پوشالی داره این مگس کثیف، این آخوندهای جلاد که فقط میتونه مردمش رو بزنه، زنها رو بزنه، کودک ها رو بزنه. این تمام قدرت کثیف جمهوری اسلامی، یعنی اینقدر اینا کوچیکن، اینقدر اینا ضعیفن که ما کافیه به این منظره نگاه بکنیم. تانک و هلیکوپتر رو ببری برای شهرها، شما اینقدر کثیف و جلاد باشی ساعت 1 و 2 شب تو کوچه‌های کردستان شلیک کنی، نگید اونجا پیرزن و پیرمردهای خسته و مریض هستن، نگید بچه‌هایی که اونجا خواب هستن و ما داریم اونا رو، براشون مهم نیست. کرد دشمنه، برای اون مردم دشمنه. وقتی که خامنه جلاد قاتل بچه‌ها به مردم میگه تحقیر میکنه مردم و به اونها میگه دشمن، درسته، اون دیگه براش مهم نیست بچه ما ساعت 2 شب خوابیده و اینا تو کوچه ها دارن تیراندازی میکنن. این بچه چجوری بزرگ میشه؟ یعنی کافی یک لحظه فکر کنی بچه شما امشب توی یکی از خونه های جوانرود یا سقز یا سنندج یا مهاباد میخوابید. این بچه ها با نفرت بزرگ میشن و اگه امروز ملت ایران کنار کردستان وای نسن، این کینه و این نفرت تو کودکان میره بالا و بالاتر، میدونی. و من این مثال میزنم، رفتم کمپای سوریه برای کردها، کلاس آموزش فیلمسازی گذاشته بودم، گفتم آرزوتون چیه؟ 100 تا بچه بودن، هر 100 تاشون میخواستن بشن پایلوت، کاپیتان هواپیمای جنگی. گفتم چرا همتون میخواین؟ گفت میخوایم اون کاری رو بکنیم که با ما کردن. گفتم نه شما باید فیلم میکر بشید، چرا این کار این انگه رو چرا ما نمیتونید؟ 100 تا 200 تا نیست، میلیون ها بچه‌ای که امروز بین 2-3 سال 4 سال و فهم دارن و کم کم میفهمن این قصه ها رو، اینا بزرگ میشن. و اگه مردم ایران این بخش از ایران رو در بغل نگیرن و نشون ندن همراهشون هستن، این انگر بزرگتر میشه و به راحتی ما مردم کردستان رو دو دستی تقدیم جای دیگه میکنیم، به راحتی خودمون باعث میشیم که اونها از سرزمین ایران جدا بشن. به این دلیل ما باید قلب ایران که اسمشو من گذاشتم کردستان، تو رو نقشم اگه گربه است، قلب اون گربه کردستان، باید مراقب این قلب باشیم. اگه این اتفاق، این آتیش، این شعله انقلاب خاموش بشه که داره خاموش میشه، تمام بزرگترین فرصت مردم ایران در تاریخ این روزها، چون جنایتکارتر از جمهوری اسلامی وجود نداشت، نه چنگیزخان مغول کرد، نه هیتلر کرد، هیچ. اصلا تو ایران میگم، نه هیچ، تو ایران هر کی اومد ضربه زد اندازه اینها ضربه نزدن به فرهنگ من، تاریخ من.
There are people who call what's happening right now in Kurdistan, I mean, it's clearly a massacre. There are people who call it genocide. This is it's a very specific term that one has to use very carefully. Would you call what is happening genocide?
نسل کشی به هر حال بوده. ما توی کشورهای همسایه دیگه هم داشتیم این نسل کشی رو. این نسل کشی بزرگترینش توی عراق بود. ظرف قریب 15-20 سال صدام بیش از 183,000 کرد رو زنده به گور کرد. این نسل کشی، واژه کردها رو هیچ وقت نمیخواستن بپذیرن. به این دلیل کردها اصلا کردها لب مرز نبودن، کردا لب مرز آورده شدن، یعنی آوردنش اونجا. شما فکر کنید، من مثال باید بزنم چون بچهای جوون امروز شاید کمتر از تاریخ بدونن. ببین، کردستان عراق لب مرز با ایران، کردستان ایران درست لب مرزه. اگه ایران و عراق جنگیدن، این دوتا شاخا ضربه خوردن، یعنی بیشترین بمبارون و کشت و کشتار تو کردستان عراق بود و تو کردستان ایران، با اینکه جنوب هم بود، که ایلام بود، کرمانشاه بود. و این راحت ترین کاری بود که کردن. کردها رو گذاشتن در جلوی مرزها که له و لوردشن. امروز اگه سوریه با ترکیه به جنگ، باز کرد سوریه است و کرد ترکیه شاخاشون، بدناشون به هم میخوره. این بلا، من اسمش اینم یکی از راههای نسل کشیه. همینجوری اونا رو تو ایزوله کنی. به این دلیل خشم در این مردم هست، جای بدی گذاشتن. و در کشورهای خاورمیانه، ژیان عزیز، کشورهای خاورمیانه هیچ وقت اقتصاد، کارخونه‌های کلان رو، بزرگ رو در مناطق مرزی نمیذارن. به این دلیل فقر غوغا میکنه در ایلام، در کرمانشاه، در لرستان، در کردستان و یا بلوچستان، به خاطر اینکه همه رو بردن اون مرکز. و تو این کنتراست رو میبینی. میدونی چیه؟ مثلا اینجوری میخوام بگم، سفره ایران ایران یک پدری داره، یه سفره هم هست 10 تا پسر داره، یکیش ترکاست، یکیش اسمش کرده، یکیش اسمش بختیاریه، ولی تو هی میکنی تو دهن یکی دوتا از اونا و بقیه گرسنه موندن. و اینجاست که اون برادرها عصبانیان از پدر، از صاحب اونجا. این تو طول تاریخ بوده. من نمیگم جمهوری اسلامی پدر، نه، اینا هیچ که پدر نیستن، اینا قاتل پدرای ما بودن. من بسم تاریخه، بریم به گذشته تر، از قاجاری، از زندیه، بگم حتی تا پهلوی یکم بهتر از اینا، ولی اونام خطای بزرگی کردن.
ولی مثل که از یه لحاظ این برادرها با هم هستن امروز. یعنی how do you feel about the fact that in Tehran they were hearing chants tonight of Mahabad tanha nist kol Iran pushteshe, that we are all with Mahabad. Do you take some inspiration from that, some comfort that it seems like this time there's a unity in different parts of Iran and people are recognizing what is happening in a place like Kurdistan?
من صادقانه میخوام اینجا بگم، من به هر حال قبلا هم با تو نشستم صحبت کردم، من همیشه گفتم وجودم ایران، قلبم کردستانه. اگه ترک میبودم میگفتم وجودم ایران، قلبم ترکی، آذربایجانه. آنچه که الان شعاره پشت پنجره هاست. ما الان توی هفته 8 9 یک انقلاب هستیم. روزی 10-15 نفر کشته میشه، به خصوص در کردستان. از پنجره ها نمیشه گفت کردستان زاهدان تا تهران ما جون فدا، با شعار نمیشه. با ویدئویی که الان مشکلی که من دارم، مدیاهای بزرگ، و ببین داستان حجاب عالی بود، حجاب رو برداشتن. ما الان 9 هفته است میگیم حجاب اصلا مسئله انقلاب زنان نبود. حجاب برای من این بود دستا رو از روسری برداریم، خم بشیم، دستا رو بزنیم رو بند کفشامون، کفشای کتیمونی ببندیم، حالا تازه میریم برای مسابقه انقلاب. در این ولی الان ما یک خانم خیلی دوستش دارم، بازیشو هنگام قاضیان این برداشت و میدونست میگیرن، گرفتنش. دیروز و پیروز اکثر خبران در مورد ایشون بود، امروز هم یکی دیگه این کارو کرد و این خبرها باعث میشه که خبرهای دستگیری بچهای ما در ایران، کشت و کشتاری که میفته، یکم برابری با اونها میکنه و این خوب نیست، چون ما در یک مرحله دیگه هستیم. روزی که مادر ستار بهشتی پیرزن 80 ساله رنجور خسته روسریشو برداشت، اونجا نقطه گذاشت روی این داستان که دیگه در مورد روسری نباید حرف بزنیم. وقتی که یک مادر مسلمون، مادر ستار بهشتی که میگه نماز میخونه، آره هست، من ایمان ندارم، من مذهب ندارم، من اسلامی اصلا نیستم، چون این مادری میاد این کارو میکنه، یعنی دیگه تموم کنیم. الان هر روز اگه خبری از حجاب بیاد، خبر یه دستگیری بیاد، خبرهای حاشیه زیاد میشه. ما باید فوکوس کنیم روی چیزی. مثل همیشه میگم، مثل یک کاپیتانی میمونیم که میخوام یک هواپیمایی رو به نام ایران بلندش کنیم ببریم به آسمون آزادی. من کاپیتان فقط روی یک چیز فوکوس دارم، how I can fly.
So what do you want? First of all, I'm so glad that you brought this up, because we talked about it a little bit in our roundtable today too. But one of the crushing things with Western media right now is even those who have woken up to what's happening in Iran. I saw a report on the weekend that the person's still saying there's protests happening this weekend in Iran based on the fact that they killed Mahsa Amini, and you're kind of like, well, no, we love Mahsa Amini. She's the icon of this, but that was actually 2 months ago. You know, there's a lot more that's happened since then that you need to catch up with here, Western media. You know, so I totally understand that point. But what do you, for the people who are inside Iran who have progressed past that, and who, by the way, the names are now, you know, not just Mahsa, but Nikah and Sarina and Kian and Khodanur, and you know, so what do you want the people in Tehran and Tabriz and Esfahan to be doing right now?
ببین من اصلا نمیتونم چیزی بگم، چون بیرون از ایرانم. چند بار رفتم مرز عراق از طریق ترکیه، هر کاری کردم گفتم ببین من میرم میتونم دستگیر بشم، شاید این وایس کوچیکی که دارم بیرون خفه بشه. ناتا دوست دارم برم، خیلی دوست داشتم برم از داخل ایران ویدیو ضبط کنم.
ولی وقتی که میگی از پنجره ها و این کار نباید، باید بیشتر یک کار بیشتر کنم، چی خواهش میکنم.
میگم نمیدونم، فقط یه جمله میگم، من خیلی ایندایرکت باید بگم. ایران داره از دست میره. انقلاب ایران که ببین تو این 43-4 سال کی جرأت میکرد اصلا اسم خامنه‌ای رو بیا؟ حتی تلویزیونایی که ضد ایرانی بودن میترسیدن اسم خامنه‌ای بیارن. الان همه صداش میزنن تو خیابون و کوچه ها، جلاد، قاتل. ببین جمهوری اسلامی روی 4 تا پایه وایساده. ژیان، من یک جایی مصاحبه کردم، اولین پایه 3 پات 4 پات، اولین پایش حجاب بود که زنا شکوندن، تموم. یه پای که شکست شما دیگه نباید دوباره در موردش حرف، شکست و بندازیش دور. 3 پات مون. یکی از پایه های دیگهش خود خامنه‌ای بود، از اون بالا کسی که مثل خدا اینجوری حرف نمیزد، مثل خدا حرف زد، اونم آوردن پایین. 3 فلسطین بود. مسئله فلسطین الان این اصلا مسئله حیاتی جمهوری با این بازی کرد که بتونه این هلال شیعه رو درست کنه. حزب اللهی که فاسدترین گروه و از ایران همه پولا رو از ایران میبرد، از under the table یک دیل امضا کرده با اسرائیل، چون میدونه که جمهوری اسلامی پایان تلخی داره، به خاطر اینکه بتونه زنده بمونه رفت امضا کرد خودش رو سیو کنه. پس اون 3 پاد یه دونه دیگه داره که اونم انرژی هسته‌ای که الان رو هواست. الان جمهوری اسلامی یک حکومت بادکنکیه برای من، حکومتی که اتفاقا الان که فکر میکنم همیشه با بلندگو بود. امروز و دیروز که هلیکوپتر آمدن دیدم اینا با صدا مردم رو میترسونن. از اون مداهایی که آتاسواش رو میومد هر تو کوچه ها دیدم واقعا اینا قدرتشون تو بلندگو بود، بلندگوی مسجدها، بلندگوی عزاداری ها، بلندگوی خوندنهای قرآن تو این کوچه ها، تو این مراسم ها، بلندگوی هلیکوپتر، موشکایی که تست میزنن، همش بادکنک بود این صدا. و این تموم شده. از من به ملت ایران باید اینجوری بگیم، ما بخشی از اونجاییم که جمهوری اسلامی نابود شده است. تمام نیروهاش الان شبکه 2 میگن، شبکه 2 تلویزیون ایران هر روز درخواست میکنن که مردم استخدام نیروهای سپاه بسیجی بشه. نیروش تموم شده. هرچی فقیر هست از روستاهای اطراف آوردنش. یعنی یکی از دوستام توی آذربایجان، توی خوی، میگفت یه روستا هست 100 تا 200 تا خونه داره، گفت 80% از این آدمای فقیر بی سوادی که اصلا دارن میمیرن برای داشتن غذا و پول، اونا رفتن دیل کردن با جمهوری اسلامی، مایی $200 به اینا میدن و میرن آدم میکشن. و جالبه میگفت تمام روستایی ها یه راست میگن اینو، من جایی که حتی روستا رفتم میگم شما از شهر میای، شما پول داری، شما حق ما رو خوردید. همیشه روستایی ها، همیشه فقیرترها ماها رو که تو شهر بودیم گناهکار میدونستن. با اون انگر، با اون خشم، روستایی داره میره توی تهران، اصفهان، میگه این تهرانیای فلان فلان شده رو بزنیم، بریم این سنندجی‌ها و اصفهانی‌ها رو بزنیم. اینها رو وحشی کردن و 80% نیرویی که الان جمهوری اسلامی داشته آدمای بی سواد و از دار و تعدیب و از جایی که روانی‌ها و معتادا رو نگه همه رو آورده. میخوام این جمله رو به شما بگم. جمهوری اسلامی پاشیده شده از هم، نیروی ما اصلا نیامده، ما با کمترین نیروی، یعنی اینجوری به شما بگم، فکر میکنم 5% مردم ایران وارد این داستان شدن، 90% با این انقلابن ولی میترسن. چرا؟ حقم دارن، چون یک نفری که امروز تو خیابونه از دید من یعنی 1 میلیون اروپایی در پاریس که میاد تو خیابون، چون اونجا نمیکشن، اونجا تازه میتونی سو کنی تو واقعا. بله، شما پس نیروی سرکوبگر باید بفهمه ما الان رسانه ما باید رو جمعیت جمع کردن فکر نکنیم، اول رو به این فکر کنیم که چجوری میتونیم نیروی دشمن رو چیزشون کنیم، ناامیدشون کنیم. باید بهشون اینفورمیشن بدیم که یک برادر، آقایی که داری میکشی، تو کیان رو میکشی و پول خون کیان رو داری میدی به بچت. باید با زن و بچه، اگه اون گوش نمیده که نمیده، باید با زن و بچهش که توی سوشال نتورک و اینا میبینن توی جای مختلف، ما باید روی این خانواده های سرکوبگر باید کار کنیم. این راه مبارزه است، نه اینکه ما فقط دعوت کنیم. اونی که میخواد مبارزه کنه میکنه، اگه نکنه خائن به مملکتش. امروز با یکی حرف میزدم توی اینستاگرامم، یه ویدیو گذاشته بودم، این بود که ملت کردها رو از دست بدید به راحتی میرن، یعنی جدا میشن از ایران، چون الان هفتاز دارن کشته میدن و همچنان منتظر کمکن. و تهران مرکز حکومت تو تهرانه. ما اگه تمام شهرهای کردستان هم بگیریم ما برنده نیستیم. ما اگه تمام ایلام و کرمانشاه رو بگیریم، چون سر اختاپوس به قول اون نخست وزیر اسرائیل، کله اختاپوس، پول، قدرت، همه اونجا توی مرکزه. ما تو مرکز باید این ضربه رو بزنیم، نه توی حاشیه ها. الان کردستان فقط سرمون گرمه. ما الان تو خونه نشستیم این ویدیوها رو نگاه میکنیم، بگیم خوبه شعله خاموش نشده. نه، تو اگه بلند نشید، فوت نکنید به شعله، کمک نکنی، انرژی ندی به این آتیش خاموش میشه، یهو خاموش میشه. اونم خسته شدن، اونام ناتوانن. بعد فکر کنید تمام بازاریایی که تو کردستان مغازه هاشون رو تعطیل کردن، ژیان جان، 99% اینا تو فقرن، پول اجاره هم ندارن، ولی چند هفته از دارن تعطیل میکنن. خب اینا دیوانه نیستن، اینا مشخص دنبال حقوق اولیه‌شون هستن. اونی که میمیره که کردا دیوانه نیستن برن خودشونو بکشن. اگه دیوانه بودن همون اوایل کارشون میکردن. اون اوایل باهوشترین ملتی که تو ایران بود کردها بود. گفت خمینی جلاده. همون روز اول که خمینی اومد تو فرودگاه، کردها اسلحه برداشتن، گفتن این ویران میکنه مملکتو. اینو به کسایی میگم که نسل جدیدن و اینا باید بدونن که کردها کی هستن. اگه میخواستنم کردستان اگه میخواستنم جدا بشن کردها، موقعیت‌های زیادی بود که کردها از ایران جدا بشن، به خصوص تو جنگ عراق و امریکا. وقتی که ایندیپندنت شد یک جورایی کردستان عراق، اینا میتونستن بلندشن و قیام کنن، نترس بودن، میتونستن. ولی الان دارن مبارزه میکنن با ایران. بیشتر شعارهای کردها فارسیه تا به زبان کردی. خب اگه تو اینو نشنوی، اگه تو اینو نری فریاد رسش باشی، این شعله خاموش میشه. و جالبه آنچه که در کردستان و ایلام و استانهای بدبخت فقر اتفاق افتاد، مواد مخدر اتفاق افتاد، آروم آروم این طوفان میاره این فقر رو به استانهای مرکزی. یعنی 1-2 سال دیگه کمتر، به خاطر خوشسالی، به خاطر وضعیت اقتصادی، زندگی تهرانی ها و استانهای مرکزی از کردستان بدتر خواهد شد. اونجاست که دیگه ما چیزی به نام کردستان نخواهیم داشت برادرم.
ببینه اولین بار که من شنیدم یا فهمیدم اسم ژیان به زبان کردی چی میشه، شما گفته بودی به من. یعنی من 2 سال پیش من نمیدونستم، اصلا تمام عمرم نمیدونستم ژیان. حالا در این شوهر رو میشنویم. خیلی چیز it's very important. Yeah, it means an honor to me. یه چیز دیگه هم که خیلی هم متشکرم از شما، این داستانی که اینا که کار رژیم دارن میکنن، مردم دارن میکشن. همینطور این برنامه هفته پیش میگفتم who are these guys? Like who can sleep at night to go into a metro with a gun and just start shooting people? I mean, why would what kind of a hold does the regime have on these men, these guys who do this kind of work, that they would go and be able to live with themselves to do that?
بله، بیشترشون هم ببخشید خیلی از کشورهای فقیر، من اسم کشورها رو نمیارم، اکثر کشورهای فقیر میرن از اونجا نیرو میارن با مای $200-300 و اون با تنفر از اونجا هم شروع میکنن که ایرانی‌ها چقدر بدن. این خود جمهوری اسلامی همون لحظه که نیروها رو اون کشورها استخدامشون میکنن، از همونجا بهشون میگن ما داریم با کفار میجنگیم. یعنی مردم ایران از دید خود جمهوری اسلامی فاسد کافرن. یعنی با این شعار این بدبخت‌ها رو میاد، چون بیسوادن، اکثر مسلمان‌ها بیسوادن. به خاطر این وقتی که اصلا خدا مسجد وجود نداشت. مسجد من اینجا میخوام اینو بگم، اولین مسجدی که درست شد توی مدینه بود، وقتی که محمد و بقیه که شمشیر داشتن و سربازاش از مدینه از مکه رفتن مدینه، خونه نبود چون خونه ها کم بودن، تعداد جمعیت کم بود، سری خونه درست کردن ظرف 2-3 روز. بعد اون بلال حبشی رفته بالا در گفته هی بلند شی، اینجا صبحونه بوده. بعد کم کم شد اذان. اصلا تو خلوت محمد و یاراش میرفتن خلوت میکردن. من به شدت ضد مذهبم. من مذهبم بشر، مذهبم انسانیت، مذهبم عشقه. ولی این داستان، این خرافات، مسجد رو کردن پادگان نظامی. تا به امروز مسجد شده پادگان نظامی. به این دلیل همچنان تو کوچه ها مسجد هست، همچنان که الان این اینترنت هست، میتونن مسلمانا واتساپ گروپ درست کنن، چت کنن با هم. ساعت 5 صبح تو باید بیدار شی با اذان. آقا من اون خدا رو نمیپرستم، من دشمن اون خدا هستم. روزی 5 بار به من میگه من بزرگم. من بابامو میکشم به من بگه من مرد خونم 5 بار در روز. آخه من دیگه اصلا خسته میشم از بابام. کدوم خدایی قراره 5 بار به تو بگه من بزرگم؟ پس این نیست. وقتی که تو بزرگ نیستی میگی من بزرگم. پس این خدا این شکلی وجود نداره که اسلامیای افراطی جلاد جمهوری اسلامی تعریف میکنن. میدونی تو بس اصلا بر ریشه‌ایه. سرزمین من جایی قرار گرفته که دور تا دورش کشورهای بلندگویی هستند، کشورهای با مذهب خیلی درگیرن، بی سوادی قوقا میکنه. یادشون دادن یه تسبیح بردارن و برن تو مسجد. اگه 2 ساعت به یه آخوند گوش بدی تو راحت بهشته، تو جات بهشته. اون مسلمانم که فکر نکرده کار دیگه بکنه، فکر کرده هر کی قرآن رو حفظ بکنه، هر کی بره نماز جمعهشو بخونه جاش بهشته. این در 80% مردم خاورمیانه از جغرافی ما جغرافیای کثیفی قرار داریم. ما باید این واقعیت ها رو بپذیریم. به این دلیل کسایی که میان میکشن از کشورهایی هستن که چشم بسته، کور، نادان، کر و لال مطلق میان و از این لیدرها رو گوش میدن. به خصوص لیدرهای شیعه. لیدر شیعه میگه که هیچ امامی خطا نمیکنه، ولی تو اهل تسنن میگن که محمد خودش 1000 تا خطا داشته تو زندگیش. ولی شیعه میگه نه، اصلا اینا پاکن از گناه، این هیچ گناهی نکردن این اماما. پس امام خمینی و خامنه‌ای هم خدا پیغمبرن، بزرگترن. وقتی که اینا میگن امام زمانم باید از روش رد بشیم به خاطر اینکه حکومتمون رو نگه داریم، این تفکر شیعه تفکر خطرناکیه. به این دلیل با اون نگاه دارن میان ملت ما رو میکشن. بزرگترین و خطرناکترین حکومت، ارتش دنیا جمهوری اسلامیه. قدرتمندترین ارتش دنیا از لحاظی که تمام پایگاه اقتصادی، زندانها، اتوبانها، کارگاهها، مسجدها، هر چی که شما در ایران بگی وجود داره. حتی آژانس‌های تاکسی وابسته است به سپاه پاسداران. این واقعیت رو باید بپذیریم. پس میخوام بگم 2-3 تا شهر بزرگ اگه میلیونی بلندشن در سکوت، دعوت به کشتن نیست، فقط بیان تو خیابون وایسن در یک روز، اگه ائتلافی به وجود بیاد، اگه دولت موقتی شکل بگیره. اپوزیسیون ما خیلی تنبلی کرد، خیلی خنگی کردن، خیلی کوتاهی کردن. الان تایمشه. همین امروز و فردا اگه فراخوان عمومی بدن، احتمال خیلی زیاد این اتفاق بیفته. اگه نه، ما بزرگترین فرصتمون از دست خواهیم داد و این جمهوری جلاد برمیگرده با تمام این تجربیات این جنگ انقلابی هم که داشته، مهرها و پایگاهاشو میتونه محکم‌تر بکنه. یک واقعیت تلخه.
در همین نقطه میخوام یه سوال، آخرین سوال بپرسم.
ببخشید من خیلی حرف زدم. دلم خیلی شما ادیتش کنید. یعنی این حرف منم بذار.
اصلا که ادیت نمی کنیم. ببین a final question to you and you know you are so one of the things that I love about you, that I think a lot of people love about you, is you really seem to lead with your heart. You're a visceral person. To know you personally as I do is to know someone who is tireless in terms of your advocacy for people that you want to help, for the Kurdish people, for Iranians, for artists, and your passion is palpable. Anybody who's listening to this right now, who follows you on social media, who has seen you talking in the last 2 months, let alone before that, can feel the heart and the passion you put into this. And I know because of that, it's very personal for you, and you get upset. And today, we're actually doing this just audio because you didn't feel comfortable doing video because you just said, I'm not a hat, I'm a wreck. I don't want to be on camera, which I respect. In all of that Bahman, as much as I see your passion, I can't tell if you are hopeful or not that this revolution is going to happen. And especially based on what you just said in terms of what the chips that need to fall for this to really take hold. How would you answer that question? Do you feel even in between the hardship and the sadness and everything that's weighing on your heart, do you feel, and Mahabad this weekend and Kurdistan, do you feel hopeful?
من صادقانه به شما بگم تا 4 روز پیش خیلی امیدوار بودم. این دوست دارم حرف درون دلم رو بزنم. تا 4 روز پیش خیلی امیدوار بودم، ولی از 3-4 روزی که این کشتاری که در کردستان اتفاق افتاده و بیشتر نقاط ایران، مردم ایران سکوت کردن، ناامید شدم یکم. و اگه امروز و فردا و این مسابقات فوتبال بیشتر داره کمک میکنه به عدم حمایت مردم. خیلی الان امروز من فکر کردم اون خشم و عصبانیتشون از بازی فوتبال میارن تو خیابون، چون معمولا ایرانیان نترسن، اگه ببرن میان تو خیابون شادی میکنن، اگه ببازن باز میان. من فکر کردم این باخت فوتبال که هم خوشحالی توش بود هم ما رو عصبانی کرد که اینا به اسم جمهوری اسلامی رفتن می اومدن تو خیابون و ساپورت میکردن کردها رو. این یک واقعیته و این که چقدر اونجا کنترل شده است نمیدونم، ولی باید شجاعت به خرج میدادن و خشم رو می آوردن تو خیابون ها. اگه این 1-2 روز آینده، یعنی من اینجوری میبینم، اگه این 1-2 روز آینده حمایت همه شهرها، بیشتر شهرهای ایران، مردم ایران مثل این مردمی که تو مهاباد و سنندج و جمارود و پاوه و سقز و مریوان و بقیه کامیاران، اینا اگه نیان جمعیت 100,000، یعنی ببین شهر کوچیک مهاباد رو شما باید بری ببینی، کامیاران اصلا کسی نرفته. این بچه‌ای که الان حرفای منو میشنون اصلا نمیدونن کامیاران کجاست، نمیدونن جوان رود کجاست. اصلا معنی جوان رود یعنی رودی که جوونه. امروز خود جوان رود واقعا معنی شد رودی که خون جوانها توش جریان داره. ما اصلا نگاه نمی کنیم کجاییم. کسی بیشترین شهرهایی که شما تو تظاهرات و اخبار رو دیدی اصلا بچه ایرانی نمیشنون، نشنیدن و ما مقصریم و ما بی توجه هستیم به سرزمینمون. ولی وقتی که میخوان جدا بشن و شعار جدایی طلبی بدن، آقا غلط میکنی، جدایی نه فلان، نه 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 نه. ما باید به شما بگیم تو اگه نبینی کردستان و روزای خوش تو همش بری شمال، اگه یکم پولتو نبری تو کردستان و مردم رو به اقتصادش کمک نکنی، شما اونجا رو از دست میدی. اونجا بخشی از سرزمین توه، اونجا طبیعتش تو رو دعوت میکنه، مردم مهمون نوازی اونجا هستن. تو باید بری. مثل این که بگید فقط دوستم باید به من زنگ بزنه، نه، تو یک ارتباطی تو هم باید وقت بذاری، تو هم باید یک گل ببری. نمیشه این کار کرد. بیش از 1 میلیون کرد الان تو تهرانن و ما دوست داریم بیشتر از این جمعیت 15 میلیونی بیشتر برن کردستان رو بشناسن. وقتی که تو اینو نمیشناسی یکم ناامید میشی. ولی ته دلم این نسل بچهای 12 15 20 ساله خیلی قوی تر از آدمایی هستن که الان تو خونه هاشون نشستن. اونایی که تو خونه نشستن جلوی بچه هاشون رو میگیرن، به نظر من خائنن. خائن چرا؟ چون اینها باعث اومدن، خیلی هاشون باعث شدن که جمهوری اسلامی بیاد. به راحتی انقلاب کردن. اینا بدهکارن به مردم. بازاری های شهرهای بزرگ بدهکارن به مردم ایران، چون اونها اعتصاب کردن تا جمهوری اسلامی فاسد موفق شد. یعنی تو الان لطف نمی کنی شیراز و اصفهان و تبریز و مشهد و تهران بازارتو ببندی، نه، تو بدهکار مردمی. این اتفاقات اگه نیفته ژیان عزیز، 1-2 روز دیگه قطعاً جمهوری اسلامی اونجا رو خاموش میکنه. اگه هم نکنه بعدش هم نمیاد. همینجوری اخبار فقط تو کردستان، یعنی روی تردمیل ما میدویم، هیچ نقطه برسیدن نداریم. گفتم وسط حرفام تمام کردستان اگه کردان بگیرن، جمهوری اسلامی همچنان جمهوری اسلامی میمونه. شما فقط کردستان رو از دست میدی. بعد اون موقع میره داستان تیکه تیکه از دست میرن. جمهوری اسلامی تو مرکز میمونه. اگه نرسن به اینا، اگه کردستان بره جداش، اصلا جدا میشه. فردا روزم بلوچستان همینجوری جمع میکنه، جمهوری اسلامی بعدش نمیاد تیکه تیکه ایران رو لتو پار کنه. چون جمهوری اسلامی ایران واحد رو نمیخواد. جمهوری اسلامی اصلا اومد که ایران رو دشمنی بذاره بین اقوام کرد، دشمنی بذاره بین شیعه و سنی. این نبود. کی از کی بعدش می اومد؟ به دوره قبل انقلاب واقعا اینجوری نبود. این زندگی رو ما نداشتیم. ولی اومدن و تمام این چادر از این سیاهی میاد، رنگ سیاه رو آوردن تو خونه هامون، تو لباس هامون، تو افکارمون، توی دروغ، چادر ریا، چادر غیبت، چادر مواد مخدر، چادر دزدی، چادر دروغ تمام ایران رو گرفت. خب این کاوه رو جمهوری اسلامی فهمید که باید فقط چادر کرد سر مردم ایران، فقط رو سر زنا نبود، رو سر ما هم هست. الان خونه های ما شده زندان های عمومی. نشستیم تو خونه تخمه میخوریم، نشستیم میگم عمو خوبی، میگه آقا بد نیستیم، یه زندگی بخور نمیر داریم. آقا اینا تو مساوی گفتم، یعنی بخور و نمیر. مگه من حیوانم؟ من یک انسانم. من آزادی میخوام. من خودم رو باید، اعتبارم و فرهنگم و تاریخم رو باید احیا کنم، برش گردونم. اون وسط نیست. بخور و نمیر وسط نداره. مردم دیگه دیتیل ندارن، مردم دیگه تو رنگ حرف نمیزنن. حرفی که کیان بچه زد حرف بزرگی بود. اول حرفاش تو اون ویدیو میگه به نام خدای رنگین کمان. فهمید که رنگ نیست، آرزوش رنگ بود اون بچه. ما رنگو باید بیاریم، ما رنگو گم کردیم برادرم. من این حرفای در دل من، بچهای ایرانی آگاهتر، هزار نه میلیون آدم آگاه اونجا هست میفهمه. به خاطر این اونا فهم دارن، میدونن، ولی باید کفشای کتونیشو ببنده و به نجات بده ایران رو برای نسل بعد نجات بده. یعنی ایران از دست میره. ما جونمون رو میدیم برای بچه هامون. خیلی جالبه، بذار اینم بگم، یه گله از فرهنگ ایرانی اینه، ما خیلی خودخواهیم. هر چیزی که همه چیز تلاش می‌کنیم برای خودمون باشه. همسایه داشتیم ما، 4 تا دوچرخه داشت پسرش، بچهای همسایه نداشتن. یکی دو سال بعد بچهای دیگه که بزرگ شدن دوچرخه نداشتن، هر روز این پسری که دوچرخه داشت میزدنش و 8 سال بعد کشتن پسره رو. بعد قاتل کی بود؟ همسایه‌ای بود که بچگی اون پدری که 8 تا دوچرخه داشت، 6 تا دوچرخه داشت، میتونست 5 تا دوچرخه‌شو بده به همسایه ها، به بچهش بگه برو بده این دوچرخه رو. اولا درس بخشندگی میداد، انسانیت میداد. 2، اون بچه ها تا آخر میمردن برای هم دیگه، میدونی. ولی ما از اول همه چیز برای خودمونه. ما دیگر خواه باید باشیم. امروز مردم ایران باید برای نسل بعدیش بخواد، ولی همه فکر میکنن یه پولی پیدا کنن بچه‌هامون رو بفرستیم بیرون. این تفکر برین بیرون، این تفکر فرار از ایرانه که نمیذاره مردم بیان بیرون. این مشکل ماست. این مشکل باید حل بشه. ما باید روی این مردم کار کنیم که تفکر خودخواهی برای خودخواستن رو بذاریم کنار. ایران کشور بزرگیه. ایران یکی از 10 کشور سرمایه دار بزرگ دنیاست. به این دلیل این مافیای دوست اومدن گرفتن، به راحتی گرفتن از ما و به راحتی هم پس نمیتونیم بگیریم ما، چون به راحتی گرفتن، برای گرفتنش باید سخت بکوشیم. کوشیدیم، این همه هفته جنگیدیم. مطمئن باشید حضور زیاد مردم تو همه شهرها در 1-2 روز کل بدنه نظامو میریزه به هم. آخرین جمله شاید توش امید باشه، اینه وضعیتی که امروز تو ایران هست اتفاق. یعنی من فکر میکنم سقوط نظام با این وضعیت، فکر نه 100% سقوط نظام این دفعه تدریجی نیست، 1 روز اتفاق میفته، چون وضعیت داغون، اصلا روی هیچی سوار نیست، تمام پایه‌هاش از دست داده رژیم. روی بنده فقط کافیه 2 طرف تنابو تون 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 تکون بدیم، اون حکومت پوشالی میفته زمین به راحتی و میدونه. به خاطر این رهبرش داره تهدید میکنه و میدونه به خاطر این رهبرش تو روز جهانی کودک دیگه حتی کلمه از کودک از کیان نگفت. پس اون کجاست؟ من اون اسلامو میکنم توی مزار و قبرستون. اگه رهبر اسلامیش از کودک کشی حرف نزنه، از مردم عذرخواهی نکنه، تسلیم نشه، تسلیم انسانیت و بشریت نشه، اون اسلام نیست برای من. تعطیل مطلقه، مذهب تعطیل. من دیگه با مذهب مشکل دارم خیلی. من آرزوم اولین نصیحتی هم اگه به نسل جدید داشته باشم، اسم بچه هاشونو دیگه نباید بذارن احمد و علی و محمد و عثمان و الاخر. تمام. من اسم پدرم علیه، اسم پدر بزرگم محمده. این اسما مگه علی بچم علی باشه، من همش علی خامنه یادم میفته. باور کنید یکی از کارهای انقلابی بزرگی که باید بکنیم، از امروز به نام این انقلاب هیچ اسم عربی نباید بیاد تو بچهای ما. اینجوری که ما تاریخمون رو احیا میکنیم، فرهنگمون رو احیا میکنیم. کوچیک نیست، خیلی بزرگه. ولی انگار میگه بابا مسئله ما نون و شب باز. نه، اتفاقا از اینجا نونت درست میشه، از عوض کردن این فرهنگ، بیرون کردن فرهنگ غلط عربی که اومد سیطره‌شو انداخت روی سرزمین من. همین.
بهمن جان، بهمن عزیز، merci. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the passion. Thank you for the education. And I'm a little heartbroken because I think you speak the truth in terms of how tenuous this revolution is balancing right now on and the fact that you see the last 3 or 4 days as something that's disheartened you to the point where the hope that you had is not exactly where it was is very difficult to hear. But I appreciate the honesty and the passion, and I always love when you come on this program. Merci. Take care of yourself, brother.
برادر، شما و همکار خوبت. قربانه.
خدا.
تا بعد.
Thought that never changes remains a stupid lie. It's never been quite the same. No hearing or breathing, no movement, no color, just silence. The rise and fall of shame.
This is Roqe episode 217, The Uprising. For all things Roqe related, including all of our Uprising shows in this series, you can go to our website, roqemedia.com, roqemedia.com, where you can also support what we do there, see outtakes, videos, extra episodes, our full programming slate. It's all there, roqemedia.com. For our final guest today, let's go to California. He is an award-winning Iranian-American attorney who has been named one of the top 100 lawyers in the United States by the American Academy of Attorneys. He's the co-founder and CEO of Soccer Geeks USA and the founder and principal attorney at Mohsen Parsa, Inc. He has begun an initiative to take legal action against big social media platforms that have been quiescent about or even enabling of the current regime in Iran. And right now, Mohsen Rumi Parsa joins me from Irvine, California today. Hello, sir.
Hi, Jian John. How are you? Nice to talk to you today.
It's nice to talk to you, and I actually want to talk to you about football, soccer on this epic day that featured the Iran-England match at the World Cup, which I know would have been on very, very early where you are in California. But let's start with your social media initiative. this is not something that comes as a surprise to a lot of people in the Iranian diaspora, let alone those inside Iran, that there is something funky going on when it comes to Twitter, Instagram, Meta. What was it that you saw that led you, that precipitated you wanting to take some kind of action?
Absolutely. So, I'm an attorney. That's what I do for a living, but I'm also involved with a startup, a software startup. So I'm fairly familiar with the digital world because, we have a team and we're tackling it. We're building an app. We've built an app, but we're working on, expanding it and making it better. For a while now, I have had concerns about institutional terrorists and terrorists in general having access to social media platforms and using these platforms to radicalize and receive support from, people from all over the world. The world as we know it has changed. There's this sense of immersive reality where the virtual reality, I don't know if it's the actual reality or the reality that we live in, have immersed to the point where, we need some rules and regulations. And what I'm arguing with the court in this case is that these companies, there's a very real conflict of interest when it comes down to enforcing their own terms and conditions. And I don't think that they're doing it fairly and equally with respect to all users. And that's basically what I'm pursuing in federal court right now.
What? Sorry, just to clarify the terms, what's an institutional terrorist?
Great question. So, institutional terrorist organization is Islamic Republic, right? So IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, is the arm of the Islamic Republic regime.
Yes.
Which has been designated as a terrorist organization by both U.S. and Canada. Islamic Republic is vicariously funding IRGC. And also, Islamic Republic has been designated as a state sponsor of terrorism since 1984, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So, in my opinion, an organization like Islamic Republic or ISIS, this would be considered institutional terrorist organizations.
Okay. By the way, we haven't in Canada advanced to the place where the IRGC is fully on the terrorist list. That is something that you guys have done in the United States, and some people are still trying to get the Canadian government to move on. But certainly there's been moves in that direction more recently.
Sure. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah,
I heard that Canada was designating IRGC as a terrorist organization, and if it hasn't happened, I know for a fact in the U.S. it has.
Yes, yes.
Thank you for correcting me about Canada.
In some ways it has, in some ways in Canada, in some ways it hasn't, and I was just keenly aware that there would be some people listening who would be writing in right now going, wait a minute.
Please correct me about Canada because I don't know the rules.
Well, people are sensitive about it because a lot of people want this to be, the IRGC to be on the terrorist list. So draw the link to me between what you have observed in terms of the imbalance, the subjectivity, the inequity of the way social media platforms like Instagram and Twitter mete out their content, and the Iran situation.
Absolutely. So in essence, these social media platforms are saying that we will enforce our own terms and conditions, the community guidelines, if you will. But the problem is these mega platforms that have hundreds of millions of users, they also have an incentive to grow their platforms, right? Because the number one source of income, revenue for these companies is through selling advertising services. Right. And we all know that controversy draws emotional response.
Right.
And controversial figures, a lot of users, a lot of clicks, a lot of shares, a lot of engagement and impressions. And then you argue that you want to enforce your own terms and conditions. There is a real conflict of interest. And so what we are observing now is this. Ordinary people are getting their accounts blocked or have their impressions diminished, whereas somebody like Khamenei who has 4.9 million followers on Instagram and a couple 100,000 followers on Twitter, being able to do what he does, promoting hate speech. I mean, so going back to your point, there are terms and conditions for these platforms where they say that hate speech is not allowed, anything that promotes violence is not allowed. Khamenei has violated every single one of these terms and conditions. And yet he's still on these platforms.
And what would be the incentive, just to be very, very clear about it, what would be the incentive of Meta to allow him to be on the platform, to continue to allow him there?
I don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out. If I can satisfy the issue of standing in this case, because it's a serious issue that I'm battling with right now. Standing basically means my ability to bring this lawsuit in federal court. The lawyers for Twitter and Instagram and Meta are arguing that I should not have standing to bring this lawsuit because, by virtue of these individuals, these government officials of Islamic Republic being on these platforms have not harmed me. And I have my own arguments for the sake of, since we're in active litigation, I can't really divulge my strategy now.
Actually, let me stop you, because let me come to the lawsuit. I just want to point out two things that are implicit in what you're saying, and just to underscore the point. These social media platforms, first of all, I know what I'm saying is not rocket science, but it is worth saying these things sometimes. These are businesses, all right? They don't because we can get lulled into feeling like these are platforms that allow everybody to have a voice, and they sort of sometimes speak in that language, freedom of expression, and this is an open source, this is a town hall, whatever Elon Musk is saying lately. But whether it's Google or whether it's Twitter or whether it's Instagram, Meta, obviously, these are businesses that have, as you say, an incentive in some cases to not be an egalitarian platform,
impartial,
right?
Exactly.
And we've learned that through studies, whether it's the last election in the States or all kinds of places where we now know that these platforms, as you say, operate to stir things up, and because it's good business for them. And secondly, I should just note that because it's something we've talked about on this show, that when it comes to Iran and this current revolution, there's been some very conspicuous suppression of voices in the diaspora, let alone internet crackdowns in Iran, who have been speaking out against the regime. And this is something that I've mentioned on this program before that happened to us as well, where all of a sudden we see some of our posts, some of our programs, some of my essays, for example, take a dramatic dip. And we start hearing from people saying, "Oh, I can't see your content. I can't see your stories." And this is where this notion of shadow banning has come up that we've learned about. I didn't even know what that was. I've learned about that in the last couple of months. So that whether we know exactly what's going on or not, we know that there's a lot of people in the Iranian diaspora, especially those who are outspoken, especially those who have a platform, experiencing some conspicuous, strange activities when it comes to the suppression of their content. Yes?
Absolutely. And, but we have to also keep in mind, these companies, they write codes, right? They have developers that write codes, algorithms that do a lot of this automatically. There's an incentive for them to try to downplay violence, because people don't want to be on these platforms and observe anything that's violent. Well, obviously, for us people, Iranians in diaspora, we want to be the voice of the people in Iran, and we want to do what we can to amplify what's happening in Iran.
Right.
Because maybe the world media is not as interested in Iranians being where they are today. And we have to also be mindful. Again, people may, not necessarily appreciate what I tell you, but we've had 3 major revolutions in the last 100 years. We also have to accept that we are also at fault for the world not taking us very seriously. But we still have to do what we can. I feel like this is the first time, at least I can remember, and I've studied history a little bit. I'm not going to claim that I know history. Clearly, I don't even know about the laws in Canada as well as I should. but I'm just, an American attorney. But this is the first time where like Iranians inside and outside of Iran have come together
Yes.
and formed this unity
Yes.
against a brutal, ruthless regime. And people like you, I told you before the program, and I'm not trying to, just give you some positive feedback just because, I'm on your show. But the truth of the matter is, we need people like you. We need programs that is directed to Iranians in outside of Iran, because there is this massive population now, and we need to bridge the gap between us and the people inside of Iran. Although I will say, and again, people may not appreciate this, but I consider myself an Iranian American.
Mm-hmm.
I came here when I was in middle school. I used this country's resources, and everything I have was given to me in this country. They respected me. They took me in. Obviously, I took advantage of the situation, but Iran is my motherland. I will do what I can, what is in my power to advocate for our people, just like you are, just like everybody else who stepped up. And what I tell people about what I'm doing right now is this: it's not about how significant your attempt is or your movement is. It's about doing what you can to show unity and solidarity with the people inside of Iran.
Or doing something. I mean, we're going to get to Team Meli, but doing something is... So tell me about the step where you said to yourself, okay, I'm seeing this stuff with the social media platforms that upsets me, and I'm a lawyer, and I'm a young rising star lawyer. Those are not just my words; those are some of the awards that you've won are called Rising Star Awards. That you say, okay, I'm going to actually try and take these mega corporations to court. I'm going to launch a lawsuit. Tell me about that decision.
Just like millions of other Iranians outside of Iran who, I swear to God, I'm not kidding when I tell you, my son, I have a 4-year-old daughter. My son was born last week.
Oh.
I thought to myself at some point to buy a plane ticket and fly back to Iran and go and fight. Clearly, I can't do that because now I have 3 dependents. I can't just make decisions that would serve me, because I am now a unit, right? So I was like, what else can I do? Well, one thing that we know is Islamic Republic has shut down internet time and again on 80 million Iranians.
Yep.
And yet they still continue to use these platforms to disseminate lies, false information, hate speech, promoting violence, and whatnot. So I was like, is there a way to cut their access off of these platforms? Now, unfortunately, Elon Musk decided to purchase Twitter. Twitter was, obviously the policy for Twitter was different. Now the policy has changed. Elon Musk is my ideal. I love Elon Musk, not from a personal, personality wise, but from a professional entrepreneurial spirit that he has.
Okay.
He has taught me a lot. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? I am going to put up this battle. Obviously, I knew I was going to go against some of the best lawyers in the United States and maybe even, anywhere in the world. But, I took this step. It's an uphill battle, but, I've been practicing law. I do litigation. I've done litigation for a decade now. And can I win this case? I don't know. Odds are against me.
What are you trying? What are you trying to win? I don't mean to sound curt, but
sure. So in very simple, plain English, deplatforming Ayatollah and his friends, Khamenei and his friends, from social media platforms. That's my goal. However, it's going to be very, very difficult for the reasons I stated, because they have a strong following. And I'm not saying that what I'm about to say is purely speculation, okay? It's purely speculation. Okay. But the terms and conditions for these mega platforms allow them to sell data to third parties on their users, meaning that theoretically, Islamic Republic can reach out to them and buy data pertaining to all of us, people inside and outside of Iran that are engaged in some type of digital demonstration to profile us, to do whatever they want. And that it doesn't sit well with me. And to raise awareness in this country is what I'm trying to do with this lawsuit. It goes way beyond just Iran situation. This is a constitutional issue. This is an issue where, it was discussed in the Congress during Trump's election last term, when the Russians mingled with the American elections.
Sure.
So it's a serious issue. And at some point, we really need to find a solution.
If you can do this very briefly and very accessibly, use common language that all understand, there's obviously a moral case. There's a popular case to say we don't want the Ayatollahs on these social platforms and with their manipulative propaganda or whatever. What is the legal case?
So the legal case, without giving away my strategy, because some people might be watching this that aren't adversarial to me, is a breach of an implied covenant of good faith to protect the integrity of the users by applying the terms of use and community guidelines fairly and equally across the board to all users, regardless of who they are.
Fair enough. Is it? I mean, you've picked a battle. It's David and Goliath is an understatement in this case, right? I mean, you're not just going up against the Islamic Republic and the IRGC and the agents and the funds and all of that stuff, but you're going up against the biggest power brokers in the world right now, which are these social media platforms. You actually tweeted on November 3rd, update, Elon Musk and Twitter have hired one of the best international law firms in the world to get my lawsuit immediately dismissed. The firm has approximately 1,100 attorneys plus Elon Musk versus me. Then you added, I'm strangely craving this matchup. I mean, that's a... Do you feel intimidated by the fact that not to be disrespectful, but it seems like on the face of it, you don't have a chance in hell, going up against this kind of firepower between the regime and the regimes of these social media platforms? I grew up playing soccer. Soccer is like my number one passion in life. And the one lesson you learn in soccer is you always keep your head up and you fight. It's the spirit that counts. I definitely have a shot at this, and if I can get through the standing hurdle and can safely land my case in federal court jurisdiction, then it's going to be a lot more interesting, because then I'm going to be propounding discovery, which is a set of questions about how they, use the data and how does the algorithm work, and obviously they're going to try to object and try to minimize the amount of information I'm going to receive, but it definitely gets interested. I'm not intimidated, although I'm putting myself at risk for reasons I discussed with you offline, not just with the Islamic Republic regime, but also some of the consequences that this could have on me personally here. Yes. That
I don't want to discuss, on this interview. But generally speaking, I'm not intimidated. I'm putting up a fight for my people. I consider myself a knight, and this is the least I can do, short of buying a plane ticket, flying back to Iran, and being in the streets of Iran.
It's become a mantra that everybody has to do their part in the way they best can, and I would dare say that it's more helpful to all of us, including the kids in Iran who are leading this revolution, for you to be doing the work you're doing rather than going and picking up some stones and joining the protesters in Tehran. But just before I leave this topic, because I want to actually ask you about football and soccer, because you're not just a fan, but somebody who's played for years and has a relationship with both the Iranian team and the U.S. team as a player. Is there anything in terms of the issue of internet restrictions inside Iran, is there anything we can realistically, legally do about that from the diaspora?
Absolutely. This is not something that I'm willing to do because it's a massive undertaking. But one thing we can do is to create a fund where Iranians in diaspora can contribute money to an organization. This organization has to be very transparent, obviously, and have the best people that work for it. And, the money collected, we can buy Starlink units and be able to, unfortunately, smuggle them inside of Iran and give access to internet to people so that they can start sharing news and information out about what's happening in Iran when the government shuts down internet. Other than that, unfortunately, because of some international sovereignty laws, nobody can really do anything, just like nobody can do anything about North Korea or some of the other countries that are close to the international community. But there's definitely things that we can do, such as Starlink, which is definitely something people can use to at least be able to communicate with the outside world. Because right now, if things get crazy, they shut down the internet and nobody's able to communicate with the outside of Iran.
All right, Mohsen, let me ask you about football. And we've been skating the line between not wanting to take the focus off the regime and the atrocities inside of Iran by talking World Cup. But the World Cup is relevant in a lot of ways, practically and symbolically. And we've been talking about it on the show, the big game that happened this morning between Iran and England. You're in an interesting position. I'm eager to hear from you on this because you're not just somebody who's clearly working very hard, donating your time and your energies and your expertise to work against this regime. So I'm aware that you'll have a very strong feeling of wanting to do what's best for the movement, for the revolution. On the other hand, you're also a football player, a soccer player who I think was recruited by Team Melli when you were in your teens and has had a relationship with the U.S. Olympic soccer team. Like you're a good enough player that you're of that caliber. So you probably have an empathy and understanding for these football players. What was how were you processing what we were going through this morning, watching Team Melli, who's been a profound disappointment to many people for not speaking out more against the regime, play against England, who were taking the knee and, by the end of the game, kicking Iran's ass?
Well, thank you for the compliments. So I was a good enough player to play at a high level, but I wasn't good enough to make it as a professional player. But I was recruited or invited to the Iran's youth national team when Mr. Jalali was the head coach of the team. I was in a tournament in Italy. This is like 15 or maybe more years ago, and he, and Dr. Zadmer, they, recruited me to go and try out for the youth national team, and I trained with the national team in Azadi Stadium.
Wow.
For some time, but unfortunately didn't make the final cut. But I did play in the U.S. Soccer is a huge part of my life. It's a huge passion, and for the time that I spent in Iran in the national team camp, I got to spend time with the kids, with the boys who played for the youth national team. And one thing I want to tell people, and again, there's a lot of emotions.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of emotions, but some of the things I am saying, I know they're bitter. People don't want to hear them, but we have to be very cautious of not converting a form of radicalism that we dislike to another form of radicalism that we feel is the right thing to do. Meaning that we should respect individuals who are not willing to do what it takes to get rid of people that are suppressing their people. I'm not saying that we should respect them. I'm not saying that we should honor them and they should be a national hero. What I'm saying is we should respect individualism in our culture.
Okay.
That is one thing I will tell you, and I'll tell you why.
Is that to say you don't expect Team Melli to speak out?
I am deeply hurt. If you look at my tweets, I'm deeply hurt because I was expecting to see more out of this national team, and I ran so many different scenarios in my head as to what would be the best course of action for them. Look, as somebody who's worked with U.S. Soccer Federation for 10 years, I worked with Major League Soccer, I worked with USL, Glasgow Rangers of Scotland, and many other European clubs, and represented American clubs. I can tell you this. As much as we want to say soccer is not a political sport, it is the most political sport on the planet, right? So, as a national team player, you're basically getting all these perks of being on the national team. For example, 4 years ago, all of these players were national heroes. I'm sure when they went back to Iran, they got this massive, support, and people loved them. We loved them. But with being, under the spotlight of being on the national team also comes a responsibility to your people. Because without the support of your people, you're a nobody. So in my humble opinion, the national team should have done a lot more. If it was up to me, I would have asked them to kneel down and not even play. Because I think the world was expecting to see a stronger, bolder reaction from these players. But I've lived with players that make it to the national team. They come from extremely poor neighborhoods in Iran, or they come from cities outside of Tehran. And it kind of goes back to a bigger issue, and that issue is awareness, education. Unfortunately, we're suffering so much because of lack of education. These players, they don't know better. They're a bunch of 20-plus-year-olds. So to crush them right now, to shred them into pieces for what they did, I don't know if that's something that I am personally prepared to do. Are they my heroes? Am I going to remember them, in Iran's soccer history? Probably not. I'm very disappointed. But to shred them into pieces, to thread them, to do some of the things that I've already seen on social media platforms after the game, I'm not personally too keen, although I understand the strong emotion and feeling that the people are going through.
But this idea that they're, I mean, it's even something that I brought up because I've interviewed athletes before. I've covered a couple of Olympics, and these are young people. First of all, to be that good an athlete, you have to be in kind of a bubble. You spent your life, fastidiously doing 16-hour days of just training, and you're not necessarily you become that profoundly good because you've been so dedicated to the craft that your awareness, as you say, is potentially going to be limited in terms of social and cultural experience that you might have by your early 20s. But is it really realistic to suggest these guys don't know what happened in Zahedan or what's happening in Tehran or the edict about the executions or Mahabad this weekend? I mean, is it really realistic to say these guys who are, probably have iPhones and are connected and don't know what's going on?
So I can personally answer your question, and then I will have a recommendation. My personal answer is they absolutely knew. Because when they were playing, I'm a soccer player. They had no soul, no spirit. They had nothing. It was a bunch of zombies running around with no spirit.
Yeah.
that tells me that they knew exactly what they were doing. What I'm asking for is, they're not our national heroes. Okay, they're not my national heroes, at least. Like, I'm not gonna ever remember this team. I always remember Ali Daei, Ali Karimi, Karim Bagheri, Mahdavi Kia. Mahdavi Kia had a contract with FIFA and refused to show up for the game. You know, they should have seen their predecessors like Daei, Karimi, Mahdavi Kia, Karim Bagheri, all of these individuals who stood up with the people of Iran. I still feel that we should have grace in terms of not completely destroying them.
Okay.
I feel like we are better than Islamic Republic as a country, where, you know, we can forget about them, we will not honor them, but there's no need for us to trash them.
I got you.
That's just my humble opinion. I'm not saying that I'm right. It's just, I'm just like, and one thing that we should learn as a country is to respect each other's opinions without judging each other. We judge. Unfortunately, we judge. Just because somebody disagrees, we start saying, oh, they're with Islamic Republic. Oh, they're with, you know, Reza Pahlavi. Or they're with Ismailion. Or Ismailion is with Mujahideen. I'm not too keen of that way. Because if we are trying to elevate as a nation, we have to learn to have grace and patience with one another.
Listen, I love everything you're saying. There's one small pushback, for example, though, is the expectations we have of some people working in some fields versus those in others. So I have had, for example, Iranian artists say it feels like a double standard that we're expected to not play concerts, to not make films, to not do plays, to not, especially those inside Iran, but Team Melli, you know, everybody's going to be happy if they just don't sing the national anthem. So, I mean, that's
a good point. That's a very valid point.
It's very clunky, right? It's clunky to try and figure this out. Why do these guys get a pass, whereas artists, for example, are expected to, you know, I mean, are screamed at for doing a concert in Australia, right? I mean, it's that's also what's fueling some of the anger, because it feels like double standards. But I totally hear what you're saying. I mean, also as a football fan, and I said this earlier in our roundtable, it was shocking to me. I'm not somebody who avidly follows every game of Team Melli and finds it somewhere on the internet, etc. But I have come to expect that they're a pretty good team, you know, going into the World Cup. Certainly considered one of Asia's best. They were awful. They were awful today. I mean, as much as I love my England team, you know, that who looked really good and have found some kind of rhythm that they didn't have in the last 6 games, it just looked horrible.
On a good day, it would have been like a close loss. It wouldn't be a 6-2 match. It would have been like a 2-1 or 2-0 or you know, something like that.
And you're right. You know, the greatest athletes of all time always talk about how important the mind is, how important focus is, how important team unity is, and all of that. And I almost say this with some I say it in a forlorn way. It's these guys, you know, they've been pulled in all kinds of different directions emotionally, whatever they've decided to do or not do, not take the knee, etc. And I guess it really fucked them up on the field, you know?
I've been thinking about this for days now because, like I said, soccer, football is a huge part of my life and my identity. I'm actually someday going to write a book about this too. But it was their ego. It was their ego because, look, the lady who rock climbed, took off her scarf, Elnaz Jan, she was so courageously brave. They literally, like, they didn't, like, apparently, like, people lost contact with her for like 24 to 48 hours, and then next we heard she was placed on a plane and flew back, and then she was under house arrest in Iran. Or the basketball team who took off all their scarves. So, you know, I am disappointed in us men, Persian, Irani. By the way, I don't like the word Persian because Persian just means Pars. And Iran is a country of so many different ethnicities. Right. So I correct myself.
Thank you, counselor.
You know, for you know, I'm just so disappointed because us Iranian men, we kept going to the stadiums all of these years, knowing that this regime was not allowing 50 or even 60% of the population to come to the stadiums. We ignored every single time they violated basic rights of our women. The women are standing up. 2 actresses were arrested just recently for removing their scarves.
Yes.
I was begging, in my heart, I was begging our national team to take a strong stance, in support, in solidarity with our women.
No, and listen, don't take anything away from Tumaj, the rapper, or Hossein Ronaqi, or there are men who are paying a dear price for this as well.
Absolutely.
But the contrast of the women's basketball team to Team Melli couldn't be greater. It couldn't be greater, and you're absolutely right.
But Jian, we still have to do a lot more as a progressive nation. I mean, look, for so many years, when somebody asked me where you're from, I would just drop my head down and kind of pretend like, oh God, like I'm gonna have to address this question now because of all the negative propaganda. For the first time in history of my existence on this planet, I feel like I can keep my head up and proudly say I'm an Iranian American, because we've shown to the world what we stand for. But as a male figure who was born in Iran, this is my personal opinion that I expect a lot more of men. And I say this because when I needed help with my lawsuit, when I reached out to public for lawyers to reach out to me if they can help, I kid you not, every single person that reached out to me were women, and there were only maybe like a handful of guys. I literally reached out and begged some of the lawyers I knew, and they brought up excuses and didn't want to be involved.
Right.
So we need to do better. We need to accept responsibility. I'm not taking away anything from anyone has done, but it's not enough. We need to do a lot more.
Mohsen, I thank you so much for coming on the program. I feel like I must beg you to come back and continue this conversation. The World Cup's going to go on for another month, so I'm sure we're going to have fodder to continue to discuss. But as well, your lawsuit, keep us in touch with how it's going, and thank you for fighting that brave David and Goliath fight.
Thank you so much for you and having me on the show. I really appreciate it, and I wish you all the best. Wish the Iranians all over the world all the best. I'm so happy, so gracious, so grateful, so just you have no idea how many times I've cried over the past several weeks of this unity that now exists amongst us.
I do have an idea.
To us.
I do have an idea. And because I get it, I feel the same. Thank you. To be continued. Merci.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's Mohsen Parsa, an award-winning Iranian-American attorney. Thanks to him for joining us on this show. This is Full Time for Roqe for today. Roqe episode 217, The Uprising. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Savi Roham, Anahita, Parsa, Pega, Mehrdad, and Shaya. Thank you to all of you out there who support us and share our content. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi, and as ever, Mizun Bashi.